Chapter 839. Poplar Fruit really lived up to his reputation as a hands-off shopkeeper. He had invested millions into the company, but he didn't even think about it once. It was as if the money had nothing to do with him. Zhang Yujie had already seen through this guy, but she didn't tell him about any progress. She wasn't his secretary, so why should she report to him? Of course, Zhang Yujie didn't tell Poplar Fruit not because she was angry, but because she knew that even if Poplar Fruit listened to her nagging, he would forget about it the next day. These things weren't as important as Kiki's eating and sleeping in his eyes. However, now that it was mentioned, Zhang Yujie still told Poplar Fruit, "I've been keeping an eye on them for you. Ludong Zhueyue's game development is really good. The young people in our company all like to play it. Also, with Blizzard's help in promoting it, it has just been released and it's already in the top 10 of the download charts." Poplar Fruit nodded and smiled. "It's pretty good. I think Uncle Hu is a very creative person. I was very optimistic about his game from the beginning." Right? Zhang Yujie wanted to talk more about the data with Poplar Fruit, but Poplar Fruit began to change the topic excitedly. His focus wasn't on whether the company was making money or not. "I'm going over now. Is Che and Juan there? I haven't contacted him for a long time." "Big Boss Yang." Zhang Yujie patted Poplar Fruit's shoulder and said, "You're always a busy man. How can you have time to contact small employees like us? It's all because of me. I informed them early yesterday that you were coming today, so they all stayed in the company to wait for your arrival." "Don't tease me." Poplar Fruit was speechless and said helplessly, "I'm just going over to take a look. You made them stop filming and stop working. What do they think of me? Am I that arrogant?" Zhang Yujie covered her mouth and giggled proudly. She felt that being able to make Poplar Fruit nervous for once was really something to be proud of. After messing around for a while, Poplar Fruit and the others finally arrived at Wanhetiani. Shosho, Baiku, Zimo, Che and Juan, and the others were still in the company. They hadn't seen each other for half a year, like the wretched Baiku, Zimo, and Che and Juan's name, to their names, but they were not famous names. Now they were famous to their image and aura, to their relationship. To their relationship. S's, twos, twoses. To their relationships, there's boss, S's relationship, they there and there. "You can't do it. I haven't seen you for half a year, and you've gotten worse." Poplar Fruit smiled and pinched Che and Juan's soft muscles. "Hey, Uncle Baldy." Kiki looked around for a while and finally recognized Shosho, who was smiling at her. She happily ran to Shosho's side, raised her hand, and shouted, "Hug!" Poplar Fruit narrowed his eyes and glanced at Kiki. He immediately understood Kiki's intention. "I'm busy," Che and Juan complained bitterly. "I'm filming every day. Sometimes I have to rush 2 scenes a day. How can I have the time?" "He's been acting in a TV series recently." Baiku smiled and explained to Poplar Fruit. Before he could finish, he heard a loud slap. Poplar Fruit looked out of the corner of his eye. When he saw Kiki being carried by Shosho, she chuckled and gently slapped his bald head. Poplar Fruit thought that Kiki would at most stroke Shosho's bald head because she used to like doing that. He did not expect Kiki to slap Shosho. "Kiki!" Poplar Fruit was speechless as he shouted angrily. As a father, he could not allow his daughter to hit people as she pleased. He seemed to have pampered this little girl too much recently. Not only him, but also Fong Beibei. After coming to Beijing, Zhang Yujie responded to her 1,000 times. "It's okay. It's okay." Shosho stood in front of Poplar Fruit and protected Kiki. He smiled and said, "It's just a touch." "Poplar Fruit, why are you so anxious?" "How is this a touch?" Poplar Fruit looked at Kiki's frightened eyes and hardened his heart to teach her a lesson. "You've already learned how to hit people. You're so rude. What will happen to you in the future?" Chi-Chi pursed her lips, and tears began to roll in her eyes, looking as if they were about to fall down. It seemed that Papa had never been so fierce to her before. Zhang Yujie stood between Poplar Fruit and Shosho. She raised her eyebrows and said, "Poplar Fruit, your temper is getting worse and worse, isn't it? How young is Kiki? She's not sensible." Can't you just teach her? Do you need to take advantage of her and scold her? Boo-hoo, boo-hoo, Papa. Boo-hoo, Kiki. Boo-hoo, Kiki knows she's wrong. Boo-hoo. Zhang Yujie helped Kiki to talk to Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit's expression became a little better. Kiki, who had been tense just now, finally cried. She choked and admitted her mistake to her father. She felt that in the world, Papa loved her the most and would always protect her. Usually, when she played with Papa, it was just for fun. But when Papa was really angry and didn't want her anymore, it was really like the sky was falling down. No matter how others tried to persuade him, it was useless. Kiki cried. In fact, the one who felt the most sorry for her was Poplar Fruit. He used his arm to push away Zhang Yujie, who was about to turn around to coax Kiki, and took Kiki from the arms of the beast. He didn't say anything, just gently kissed his daughter's cheek and her tears. Kiki doesn't dare. Boo-hoo. Boo-hoo. Kiki hugged her father's neck tightly, still crying non-stop. Poplar Fruit could only gently stroke Kiki's soft long hair, comforting her. Papa knows. Kiki is very obedient and will admit her mistake. Papa is very happy. Finally, Kiki stopped crying. Zhang Yujie pulled her to make a bottle of milk for her to drink. Poplar Fruit stayed in the conference room, continuing to catch up with the beast and the others. After understanding, Poplar Fruit realized that after not seeing each other for half a year, when he and Tiany's group of good friends had developed very well, there was no need to talk about the beast. He was the boss himself and earned a lot of money. His resources were distributed to the actors and directors under him. Zimo was now single-handedly directing the web series Unexpectedly, and had recently started planning and filming a new web series, Reporting to Boss. The Beast only existed as a producer. He had also acted in the micro-movie Exorcist, starring the movie king and famous comedian Huang Bai. Other than Unexpectedly, Baiku had also started to act in a micro-movie that one he was involved in. Other than that, he had also participated in an episode of Mango TV's variety show. Unexpectedly, Baiku's talent in variety shows was not bad. Next year, he wanted him to continue to be a regular on a variety show to promote his popularity. Perhaps Poplar Fruit was a little too strict with this plot. But for a father, sometimes being strict is not a bad thing. A kind father is good, but too much pampering is not good for a child's growth. Chapter 840. Xiao Gu and the others were not bad either, especially Zhang Benyu, who became one of the male leads in the new web drama, Reporting to Boss. Xiao Gu also became the one and only female lead, if the cross-dressing teacher Kong was not included. Che Injuan, on the other hand, was doing the best out of all of them. 3 months ago, when he heard that there was a period drama ready to be filmed, this did not match the facts, but it was not to be bothered, so they recommended Che Injuan for the audition. They did not expect him to pass. Although he was not the main lead, or even the main supporting role, he was still a supporting role with many scenes and lines. It's mainly because Xiao Jun has a good foundation. The Beast praised, he looks quite handsome in a period drama, and he knows kung fu. When he performs those moves, he's much better than those who only know some fancy moves. Che Injuan touched his nose in embarrassment. Baiku, who was closest to him, put his hand on his shoulder and exclaimed loudly about Che Injuan's opportunities. Che Injuan was considered a newcomer this year, but he could already participate in the filming of a TV drama, and it was a big production. He was really lucky. That's why I told you not to slack off. It's right to train and maintain your kung fu. Poplar Fruit laughed. The Beast has already told you. If you don't have kung fu, why would they choose a newcomer like you who has no experience at all? Just look at those who drifted from Beijing and Hengwu, who did not slowly make their mark after playing minor roles for a few years. It's better to have a skill than to compete with others empty-handed. The Beast also laughed. Look at Baiku. Why didn't I recommend him for the audition? It's because he's not good at kung fu. Baiku's face darkened. He held his chin speechlessly and sighed. Sigh. I'm just sitting here and getting shot. Actually, the company should have a lot of resources. Poplar Fruit said to the Beast, you should communicate more with Zhang Yujie. Her family is very well informed in this regard. Next year, We can increase our efforts and get more audition opportunities for our company's people. We can't always act in web dramas. After all, these are not considered mainstream. Baiku and the others can't get any experience in them. Go out and act in other people's dramas and movies. Later, when we have experience, we can also get investors to act in our own dramas and movies. Poplar Fruit laughed. Meng Shou, Zimo, and the others were all pumped up by Poplar Fruit's words. They rubbed their palms together as though they wanted to do something big. Actually, Poplar Fruit was only an armchair strategist. In fact, he was just drawing a picture for them to see. How could he know how difficult it was for a new media company to participate in the traditional circle of television dramas and movies? Of course, who knew if Wanha and Tianyi were incapable? These people were all young people who were born in the 80s and were not afraid of tigers. They were creative, capable, and supported by Zhang Yujie and Poplar Fruit's funds and resources. The future would only get better and better. After having lunch with them at noon, Poplar Fruit and Zhang Yujie left. They were not free either. Although they were not the main characters of the afternoon screening, they still had to go there early. They could not interfere with Lian's work. Lian really did not have time to receive them. After exchanging a few pleasantries, he asked his assistant to bring Poplar Fruit and Zhang Yujie in first. However, Kiki could not follow. She was still a child. What if she cried and threw a tantrum? There would be a lot of cinema managers coming to watch the film. This was not a special event for Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit had a headache. After Kiki cried in the morning, she began to worry that her father was angry at her disobedience and would leave her alone. Therefore, she refused to stay outside with Zhang Yujie's assistant. Forget it! Zhang Yujie waved her hand and stood up to pick up Kiki. She said, "I'll accompany Kiki outside. You watch the movie alone." When Zhang Yujie came to pick up Kiki, Kiki did not throw a tantrum as before. After all, she was very familiar with Zhang Yujie and felt that she was like a relative. Auntie would not lie to Kiki. Moreover, Auntie also said that if Papa lied to Kiki, she would be responsible for spanking Papa's butt. "You don't want to watch it? Is it really okay?" Poplar Fruit asked somewhat embarrassedly. How could Zhang Yujie not be okay? She was looking forward to watching a movie with Poplar Fruit after waiting for a few months. In the end, in order for Kiki not to cause trouble for Poplar Fruit, she stood up resolutely. "You owe me a movie." Zhang Yujie laughed heartily and said, "I don't care. Anyway, you have to watch it with me before you go back." Poplar Fruit nodded helplessly. Zhang Yujie really went out, and her assistant did not stay. Therefore, Poplar Fruit stayed behind alone and began to watch the movie with the heads of a group of cinema managers. If this was the first time he had seen this story, Poplar Fruit would have been amazed by this imaginative movie. After all, the young villain, a hyena, a zebra with a broken leg, an orangutan, and a Bengal tiger were thrown into an escape boat in the Pacific Ocean. In the end, the young villain survived with his own wisdom. This was an almost impossible thing. However, after reading the book and fully understanding the development of the story, Poplar Fruit was not interested in the plot of the movie. He felt that, after all, the movie was still made, and there was limited room for imagination. The book was better, and people could freely imagine some of the plot. It was no wonder that the great director Lian was so nervous and insisted that they not sell the book in advance. Could it be that Li An's movie had no redeeming qualities? Of course not. Li An's movie was more rhythmic than the original book's description, and the expression of emotions was more delicate. More importantly, he used a lot of special effects to portray a magnificent and fantastic sea world for the audience, especially the spectacular flying fish, the rippling sea surface that was sometimes calm and sometimes violent, and the quiet and beautiful green uninhabited island that hid murderous intentions. After watching the movie, Poplar Fruit stretched. He did not wait for Lian, who was talking to the cinema managers, and walked out by himself. Kiki had been anxiously looking around. Zhang Yujie asked her assistant to buy toys for her, but she could not calm her down. "Papa!" Kiki rushed over and squeezed into her father's arms. Smiling sweetly, she did not want to break free from her father's arms again. However, Poplar Fruit still had to translate the subtitles for the great director Lin. "Do you remember that many words?" Zhang Yujie asked with a frown when she saw Poplar Fruit take the laptop. There was only a blank Word document on it. Poplar Fruit said with a smile, "I remember. In fact, there are not many lines." There were really not many. Most of the movie was a world of one man and one tiger. Poplar Fruit felt that it was a waste of his talent to come here. His fingers were frantically tapping on the computer keyboard, as if he was translating. The content had already been translated in his heart, and he only needed to type out all the drafts in his mind. In less than 5 minutes, Poplar Fruit handed in the task. He held his daughter in his arms and left with Zhang Yujie. They were going to find another cinema to watch a movie. Chapter 841. Poplar Fruit felt guilty, but he still went to watch the movie with Zhang Yujie. He was originally worried that there would be a conflict with Fang Beibei's choice of movie, but in the end, Zhang Yujie booked the entire theater. Moreover, she even added money to let the other party play the movie that had already been removed from the drawing. She considered that Kiki would be there and worried that Kiki wouldn't be able to enter the theater, so she simply booked the entire theater. There were hundreds of empty chairs, and only she, Poplar Fruit, and Kiki were sitting inside. "It's the first time in my life that I've booked the entire theater to watch a movie," Poplar Fruit said emotionally to Zhang Yujie, who came back. "I can speak without restraint. This feeling is really too rich." Poplar Fruit handed a big bucket of popcorn and drinks to Zhang Yujie. He also had a bucket, and Kiki was eating happily. The popcorn was crispy and sweet, which was very in line with Kiki's taste. However, Poplar Fruit had to watch carefully, in case she didn't bite into it and choked on it. If you don't want others to disturb you, or disturb others, then you can only book the entire theater. Anyway, it's not much more money. Zhang Yujie laughed. She also grabbed a handful of popcorn and giggled as she ate. The lights dimmed, and Poplar Fruit took the popcorn from Kiki's hand. He couldn't let her eat anymore. She wasn't afraid of choking, but she was also afraid of the heat. However, Kiki was also attracted by the bizarre movie on the big screen. The opening was the title of 20th Century Fox. Poplar Fruit looked at it and felt that something was wrong. He turned his head and asked Zhang Yujie, "Hey, that's not right. Didn't you ask them to play Painted Skin 2 for you?" Painted Skin 2" was a movie that Zhang Yujie had always wanted to watch. She had just told Poplar Fruit that it was because she liked Zhou Gongzi very much. Perhaps their personalities were similar, but because she had been too busy during the month of its release, she hadn't been able to go to the cinema to watch it. Now that it was no longer screening, she had used her connections to persuade the cinema to find a copy for her. But Painted Skin 2 was a domestic movie. What was 20th Century Fox doing? Shouldn't it be some sort of review by the general administration? Someone told me that Painted Skin 2 is not suitable for children to watch. Zhang Yujie said while eating popcorn, "That's why I chose this one. It's a cartoon Ice Age 4. I've never seen it anyway." In the end, Zhang Yujie added, "You and Kiki should both like to watch it." After that, she smiled proudly. She remembered that when they were in Xiong Village, Poplar Fruit often held a laptop and watched Pleasant Goat with his daughter. Kiki watched it with relish, and Poplar Fruit was also very engrossed in it. Poplar Fruit was silent. He was not speechless because of Zhang Yujie's ridicule, but he was really touched by Zhang Yujie's sacrifice again. This was the opportunity to watch a movie that Poplar Fruit gave her as compensation. Zhang Yujie did not choose the movie that she liked, but chose the one that Kiki liked. The beginning of Ice Age 4 was a dark blue sea. It was not as vast as the fantasy drift that Poplar Fruit had just watched, but soon, the camera showed clouds floating on the water and towering ice and snow mountains in the distance. The picture flashed again, and a vast expanse of white ice appeared. Then, a little squirrel suddenly appeared in the skyline. Poplar Fruit had watched the first few Ice Age movies, until this little squirrel was a stubborn little thing that looked at pine cones as its life. He looked at his daughter and found that she had already been attracted by the big screen. That little squirrel was too cute. It had nimble movements, a fat tail, an ugly nose, and eyes that were as quick-witted as a thief's. Although there was no dialogue at the beginning, Chi-Chi was still amused by the little squirrel's clumsy movements. Her laughter was even louder than the little squirrel's screams as it fell from the earth's cliff. Fortunately, the theater was booked. Poplar Fruit wiped his cold sweat and looked at Zhang Yujie. If the theater wasn't booked, who knew how many people would be affected? The little squirrel was thrown high into the sky, and when it fell, it was a blue ocean after the continents separated. When Kiki saw this scene, her mouth opened into an O shape, and she watched nervously. Bang! A small piece of ice floated on the water surface, blocking the little squirrel's wild desire to enter the water. And the moment it crashed into the ice, Chi-Chi once again burst into laughter that made her throw her head back and forth. Delinquent Father Poplar Fruit suddenly felt that Kiki was much more fun than the movie. Her giggling was really charming. He and Zhang Yujie secretly looked at Kiki and muttered. Poplar Fruit no longer cared about what the movie was about. Kiki laughed from the beginning to the end for an hour and a half. Towards the end, she lay on her father's body without any strength. Her father asked her, "Is it that funny?" Kiki also nodded lazily and couldn't speak. Poplar Fruit thought about it, but he still didn't ask Kiki whether Ice Age was better or Pleasant Goat was better, because he understood that Kiki's judgment would be very difficult. After all, Pleasant Goat was a cartoon that she liked for a long time. Not to mention Kiki, it was difficult for Poplar Fruit to judge by himself because domestic cartoons and American cartoons were fundamentally different. American cartoons were all about heroic plots, and they relied on invincible special effects and funny effects to win. On the other hand, domestic cartoons had more creativity, and they were produced locally, so they understood the tastes of the people more and were closer to our lives and reality. Do you want to watch another scene? Poplar Fruit looked at Zhang Yujie apologetically and asked. This time, she was accommodating the father and daughter. Poplar Fruit felt bad. There's no need. Zhang Yujie glanced at Kiki, who was lying on Poplar Fruit's body, and smiled. Bring her back to rest. You've been busy the whole day, and you all need to rest. Sometimes, it was more effective to let a man remember you're good than to chase after him relentlessly to ask for debts. Zhang Yujie didn't want to pester Poplar Fruit and make him sick of her. She only wanted to slowly increase her weight in Poplar Fruit's heart. And one day, she would be able to snatch Poplar Fruit away. Poplar Fruit nodded, and he helped Kiki tidy up her hair with heartache. Laughter consumes energy. Although Kiki was dancing happily just now, she looked like a withered flower after coming out. He was also in a hurry to go back so that he could give Chi-Chi some sweet water to soothe her throat and feed her some food. Otherwise, Chi-Chi would definitely fall asleep a little later than usual. She would definitely fall asleep earlier than usual. Zhang Yujie had already sent her assistant away. She drove Poplar Fruit back to the hotel. I'll pick you up tomorrow to go to the airport, Zhang Yujie said. Poplar Fruit was going back tomorrow. He had already agreed with Fang Beibei that he would be gone for 3 days. Since he had nothing to do in Beijing tomorrow, it was time to go back. Looking at Zhang Yujie's expression, which didn't allow Poplar Fruit to refuse, Poplar Fruit could only nod, close the car door, and watch the Maserati drive away. Chapter 842. His original plan was to return to Yangqing City, but his plans always changed. After receiving a phone call, Poplar Fruit's face turned gloomy as he clenched his fists. He immediately contacted the airline to change his ticket. Baby, I can't go home right now. Poplar Fruit gave a call to Fang Beibei and apologetically said, There's a problem with a classmate of mine from university, and I have to go over to take a look. I'll be back later. Fang Beibei remained silent for a while Poplar Fruit listened for a long time without saying a word. He also felt a little uncomfortable in his heart as he said, Baby, it's my fault. I shouldn't have stood you up. But really, there's a problem with her side, and she was deceived by someone. I want to visit her. Is it a girl? Fang Beibei asked hesitantly on the other side of the phone. Poplar Fruit frankly said, Yeah, it's Duan Xueqing. I told you about her when I took her graduation photo. It's a junior sister. Fang Beibei's voice suddenly became aggrieved. She seemed to have something stuck in her nose as she sullenly said, But I already bought the movie tickets, and I was just waiting for you to come back. Baby, don't cry. Poplar Fruit completely understood his girlfriend's state. Although she hasn't cried yet, she's not far from crying. He immediately explained to Fong Bebe, "It's really an emergency this time. I just received a call from her. And I immediately told you after hanging up. I'm worried that something might have happened to her. So I had no choice but to ask you to postpone the movie for 2 days. Is that okay? I promise that I'll come back immediately after visiting her." "But you also said that you would come back immediately," Fong Bebe said in an aggrieved tone. "Why are you so worried about other people's matters? When I was studying, she was one of my close friends. Now that my friend is in trouble, I have to go and visit her," Poplar Fruit explained. Fong Bebe had seen the photo of Duan Shueching. Poplar Fruit was quite frank with her, of course. Poplar Fruit was not stupid enough to say that the Duan Shueching was interested in him. However, perhaps because of a woman's sixth sense, Fong Bebe was very afraid of the Duan Shueching. That girl made Fong Bebe feel unconfident about her appearance for the first time. When Poplar Fruit said this, Fong Bebe felt even more wronged. She said timidly, "Why are you so warm to others? Don't you even consider my feelings?" His heart ached. Poplar Fruit could hear the sadness in Fong Bebe's voice. His heart felt as if it was being squeezed. This kind of pain was different from when he received the call from Duan Shueching. Earlier, he only felt anger, but he did not feel this kind of heartache. "Baby, in my heart you will always be different from others," Poplar Fruit said seriously. "Friends, I will care about them, worry about them, and be anxious for them. But you are different. You will always be the girl that I care about. Your matters are my matters. My concern for you is something that others can never compare to. Then, if I say that I have something that I need you to come back to help me solve, will you come back?" Fong Bebe sniffled and asked. "Yes, definitely," Poplar Fruit said resolutely. "You will always be ranked first. In English, you are the first priority." Fong Bebe was amused by Poplar Fruit's serious words. With a nasal voice, she said angrily, "Don't speak English to me. You know, I'm stupid." "How can you be stupid? Our baby is the smartest," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Then, "Should I go home or?" Fong Bebe was silent for a while. She said in a muffled voice, "No need. I can handle things here. You go and see your friend first. Go home early." "And I will," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Fong Bebe's understanding made him feel relieved. He was about to take out his laptop, but he put it back. "This time I came here to meet the beast," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. "I never thought that those friends would improve so much." Fong Bebe and Poplar Fruit both liked this web drama. Although Poplar Fruit was their boss, Fong Bebe and Poplar Fruit regarded themselves as pure audience. Especially Fong Bebe. Sometimes she laughed until she had no strength to lie on Poplar Fruit's arm. Fong Bebe reluctantly became interested. She seemed to be still immersed in the unhappiness of Poplar Fruit not coming back in time. Poplar Fruit just wanted to say something fun to make Fong Bebe happy. He said with a smile, "Yes, Kiki played with the beast. She patted its big bald head, and the beast decided to give her a guest role." "Didn't she already make a guest appearance last time?" Fong Bebe asked curiously. "She can make a guest appearance again? That's great. Which episode is it? I want to look for it." "It hasn't been filmed yet," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. "The first season of Unexpectedly is almost finished. The script is also written. We can only add Kiki in the next season." "Okay," Fong Bebe said lazily. She seemed to be in a bad mood. Poplar Fruit was helpless. He understood his girlfriend's thoughts. She missed him. He could only solve the problem with Duan Shueching as soon as possible and then rush home to comfort her. "Bao Bao, do you want to make a guest appearance?" Poplar Fruit said with a smile. "I'll tell the beast that we'll go to the capital together next year. We can act and play at the same time. You haven't been to the capital yet, right?" "It doesn't matter if we act or not," Fong Bebe muttered. "I just want to be with Uncle and Kiki. I don't want you to always leave me alone." "You won't," Poplar Fruit comforted her. After putting down the phone, Poplar Fruit's face darkened again. He clenched his fist and growled in a low voice. Pai Dinwan, Duan Xueqing called him in the morning. At first, she was silent and didn't say anything. Poplar Fruit frowned at that time. He didn't think that Duan Xueqing was playing a prank on him. With Duan Xueqing's personality, it was impossible for her to play a prank. She also couldn't have pressed the wrong number. Poplar Fruit could hear her heavy breathing. The only possibility was that there was something she wanted to say, but she couldn't say it. This situation was very rare. Even when she confessed to him in the past, she didn't say anything like this. Xueqing, what's wrong? What happened? Poplar Fruit asked softly. After a long time, a faint voice came from the other side of the phone. I'm sorry. Sorry? What are you sorry for? Poplar Fruit laughed. If there's something you want to say, just say it. I'm not a petty person. Okay. I'll forgive you first. It's not that, Duan Xueqing said. She paused for a few breaths. When Poplar Fruit was about to ask, she stammered. Pai Dinwan, I set you up. I'm sorry. I didn't know. What do you mean? Poplar Fruit was confused by Duan Xueqing's words. Pai Dinwan, what did he do? Chapter 843. It was impossible for Duan Xueqing to explain such a complicated matter over the phone. That was why Poplar Fruit decided to make a trip to Jiangnan. On one hand, he wanted to understand the situation, and on the other hand, he wanted to comfort Duan Xueqing. Even though it was all that bastard Pai Dinwan's fault, Poplar Fruit felt that he was partly responsible as well. Not only was he unable to differentiate between Pai Dinwan's character, but he was also too careless in the past. After rejecting Duan Xueqing's confession, he didn't truly help Duan Xueqing and help her walk out of the shadow of heartbreak. Perhaps if she hadn't left Yangqing in such a depressed state, Pai Dinwan wouldn't have taken advantage of her. Poplar Fruit brought the cold air of the north with him as he flew to Jiangnan, which was as warm as spring. After Kiki got off the plane, she kept complaining about taking off her jacket. Poplar Fruit didn't have any extra clothes on hand, so if Kiki took it off rashly, she would easily catch a cold in the wind. Even though Jiangnan was very warm, it was still late autumn. Poplar Fruit only helped Kiki unzip her jacket. When they arrived, he took out Kiki's thin jacket from the suitcase and put it on her. This was the first time Poplar Fruit came to Jiangnan. Duan Xueqing didn't want him to come over and see her lonely state, so she hung up the phone. Luckily, he contacted Tao Buqing, whom he had met once in Bali. Poplar Fruit, you're just in time. Tao Buqing drove Yang Guo from the airport to the small town in Jiangnan, where the Duan family was located. He nagged, I heard that Miss hasn't been eating or drinking for the past few days. She's been staying in her room every day. When you see her, try to persuade her. There are so many good men in the world. Don't make life difficult for yourself over a single tree. Poplar Fruit saw that Tao Buqing had been secretly looking at him with a weird gaze, which made him a little confused. He smiled and said, That's for sure. Xueqing is my good friend. He didn't know that Tao Buqing had been suspecting his relationship with Duan Xueqing. When they were in Bali, the way Duan Xueqing looked at Poplar Fruit was strange. However, at that time, there was Pai Dinwan by Duan Xueqing's side. Tao Buqing secretly sighed and muttered in his heart, Neither of them is suitable, neither of them is worthy of the young miss. One is a big liar, and the other has a family to feed. Why are all the men that Miss knows so unreliable? Teacher Tao, I want to ask you, what do you know about Pai Dinwan? Poplar Fruit couldn't help but ask. Duan Xueqing wasn't deeply involved in the world and was easily deceived, but she was always at home. Even when she went to Bali, she had Tao Buqing by her side. Tao Buqing was already in his 50s or 60s, so how could he not see it at all? He's just a liar. Tao Buqing said with prejudice and some agitation, When we were in Bali, I felt that this guy had bad intentions. He was always smiling, and his politeness must be fake. Poplar Fruit didn't respond. He felt that Tao Buqing's words were a little belated. What did he mean by smiling? There was no real meaning to it. If one felt that a person was a good person, then his smile would naturally be as bright as the sun. If one felt that a person was a bad person, regardless of whether he was crying or laughing, he would feel that it was fake. This was normal. Poplar Fruit turned his head and thought about the 2 or 3 times he met Pai Din-1 in Bali. If Pai Din-1 met Duan Xueqing to frame him, then why did he show such strong hostility in front of him? Poplar Fruit could clearly feel that Pai Din-1's hostility didn't come from other things, but from Duan Xueqing, who was standing next to him at that time. It was hostility because of jealousy. Poplar Fruit thought so because he had experienced it himself. At that time, when he saw a boy confess to Fong Bei, his heart was full of jealousy. Tao Buqing said to himself, "Poplar Fruit, you don't know that Pai Din-1 wanted to squeeze into our team in order to go to Bali. He was originally a small wedding photographer, but his boss was more powerful, and his family was rich in our area." Tao Buqing told some of the inside stories he knew. Poplar Fruit finally cheered up and listened to his nagging. "I didn't expect that he would even lie to his own boss, who was his old classmate. Through his boss, he found a connection with our young master and joined our team to go to Bali. But no one knew what he was going to do," Tao Buqing said indignantly. "Now we know that he has disappeared. He cheated our young mistress." It seemed that Duan Xueqing didn't tell her family that Pai Din-1 framed Poplar Fruit. Now the Duan family only knew that there was such a person who cheated Duan Xueqing. However, except for the emotional pain, it seemed that Duan Xueqing and the Duan family didn't have any other losses. "You just let a stranger follow you to Bali?" Poplar Fruit frowned and asked. Tao Buqing smiled bitterly and said, "You don't know how rich Pai Din-1's boss is. Let me tell you a secret. His father is a senior official in the province. Even if they add one more person to their family and let us arrange a trip at public expense, we have to be obedient. At that time, our young master also said that we don't need to care about him. We just do our business, and he can do whatever he wants." Tao Buqing suddenly became angry and said in a raised tone, "Later, we found out that he lied to our young mistress, saying that it was our family who forced him to go abroad. Our young mistress thought that our young master wanted to break them up, so she also went to Bali. He cheated Xueqing to go to Bali. What was his purpose?" Poplar Fruit asked with doubts. If Pai Din-1 wanted to frame him, why did he take Duan Xueqing to Bali? If Duan Xueqing was also a part of his plan, why didn't Poplar Fruit see any effect until now? Duan Xueqing seemed to have come to Bali and then went back. Also, Poplar Fruit met Pai Din-1 by chance and rescued him. Was this also Pai Din-1's plan? This person was too shrewd. Wasn't he? He had to know the exact route back to the hotel and the time he came out. Besides, what was the use of this trick? Except for making him miserable. Poplar Fruit suddenly had an idea. His body trembled and he thought, he couldn't have told Xueqing that I was the one who beat him, right? If that was the case, this Pai Din-1 was really sinister. Poplar Fruit gritted his teeth. If that guy was standing in front of him, Poplar Fruit would definitely beat him up again. However, what good would it do him to drive a wedge between him and Duan Xueqing, including what Duan Xueqing said on the phone to frame him? This was what Poplar Fruit couldn't figure out. Poplar Fruit was 100% sure that before he came to Bali, he had never seen or heard of Pai Din-1. Chapter 844. Before he came to Duan Xueqing's house, he had never seen Poplar Fruit. In China, there were rich people who lived like landlords in modern society. Although it was not as luxurious as Ardal's house, it was still beyond Poplar Fruit's imagination. Perhaps Zhang Yujia's family was richer than Duan Xueqing's, but Zhang Yujia lived in Beijing, where every inch of land was worth its weight in gold. No matter how rich she was, it was difficult for her to buy a few acres of land and build 2 connected villas like the Duan family. The rest of the land was either a garage or a garden-like garden. First of all, in terms of visual impact, the Duan family was much richer than the Zheng family. Although they were not as rich, at least they had a reputation. Poplar Fruit was even more shocked. When he was in Bali, he had already guessed that the Duan family was rich, but he did not expect them to be so rich. Duan Xueqing had lived in the simple apartment that Poplar Fruit had left for her after graduation last year. Now it seemed that she was really a rich princess visiting incognito and experiencing the hunger and cold of the common people. Little baby, come and play with me. Duan Xueqing's sister-in-law's belly was a little big. It was probably because of pregnancy that her maternal instincts were triggered. When she saw Kiki, she immediately forgot about Poplar Fruit, the guest, completely. No, Papa. Kiki pouted and turned her head away proudly. Although the surrounding environment was very novel, she felt that the auntie was very unfamiliar. It was safer to stay by her father's side. However, when she saw Duan Xueqing, Kiki could not stay still. She knew Auntie Duan, but she was still like Yang Cheng. Kiki always felt a little scared when facing her. This feeling was even more obvious now. Auntie Duan was like a big ice cube, cold and unapproachable. Kiki turned her head and looked at the pregnant auntie who had sent them over. She seemed to be thinking if it was a better choice to play with this auntie. Little baby, let me take you to the garden. There are a lot of fun things in our house, and we even have a children's amusement park. Duan Xueqing's sister-in-law saw Kiki's hesitation and happily invited her again. Poplar Fruit smiled and let go of Kiki's hand, who was a little tempted. He squatted down and patted Kiki's little butt, and asked, Kiki, do you want to go out and play? Dad has some things to discuss with Auntie Duan? Yes. Duan Xue's sister-in-laws. She was a little embarrassed because she said she did not want to play with Duan Xian. Then go out and play with this auntie. Remember to be obedient, don't jump around, and don't touch auntie's stomach. Okay? Yang Gui said with a smile. Call me Sister Xian. Duan Xueqing's sister-in-law smiled and said, You're making me sound old. Okay. Thank you, Sister Xian. Please take care of her. Poplar Fruit stood up and put Kiki's little hand in her hand and said with a smile, Chi-Chi was brought out by elder sister Xian. It was said that elder sister Xian had built a small children's playground on the lawn of the manor. It was designed for her child to be born next year. Chi-Chi was so lucky that she could experience it in advance. After Kiki left, Poplar Fruit pulled a chair and sat down. He sighed softly and looked at Duan Xueqing, who looked a lot more haggard, and said, Tell me what's going on. Duan Xueqing was silent, and her eyes didn't move for a long time. After a while, she sighed faintly and opened the drawer. She held a stack of photos in her hands and handed them to Poplar Fruit. What's this? Poplar Fruit looked at the photos curiously. At first, he thought that Paidin 1 had sold some state secrets. However, Duan Xueqing lowered her eyes and said in a dry voice, The information about you that was exposed by the media was sold by him. In order to explain, Duan Xueqing said the longest sentence she had spoken in the past few days. It was him? Poplar Fruit was shocked. Poplar Fruit didn't believe that a seemingly simple man like Paidin 1 would do such a thing. However, looking at the photos in his hand, perhaps that was the case. Otherwise, why would he meet with so many foreigners? How did you get these photos? Poplar Fruit frowned and asked, Could it be that someone framed him? The photos could also be photoshopped. Duan Xueqing didn't answer, but quietly took out her Walkman and played the conversation for Poplar Fruit. As Yang Gui listened, she clenched her fists so tightly that they cracked. However, even though Poplar Fruit was very angry, he still retained a little bit of rationality and asked, the recording mentioned a mission. Could it be that he was forced? Duan Xueqing looked up, her cold eyes emitting a light without a trace of emotion. She only said 4 words. What's the point? Yes, what's the point? Even if he was forced, he didn't waver because of Duan Xueqing. Even if he was forced, he had already made it a fact. What's more, was he being forced? From the photos of him handing over the USB flash drive and money to the reporters, he didn't know how happy he was. Poplar Fruit felt that he was a little ridiculous. Why did he still care about the reason Paidin 1 framed him? He had already deceived Duan Xueqing's feelings, deceived a girl like her, and treated her as a stepping stone to get closer to Poplar Fruit. On this point, he was already unforgivable. Where is he now? Poplar Fruit pressed on the back of the chair, slowly stood up and asked. His heart was raging with anger, and the aluminum alloy frame of the back of the chair was bent out of shape by his grip. Disappeared. Duan Xueqing suddenly sighed faintly and said. Poplar Fruit firmly clenched his fist and said to Duan Xueqing, Xueqing, don't worry. If I see him, I'll definitely beat him up until his parents can't recognize him. Poplar Fruit had already told Pai Dinwan, when they were in Bali, that if he dared to let Duan Shueching down, he would definitely beat him up. Duan Shueching withdrew her gaze from Poplar Fruit and turned her head to the side. She didn't have any intention of continuing the conversation with Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit paused and asked the question he had long wanted to ask. On the night of the cocktail party, did Pai Dinwan tell you that I beat him up? Duan Shueching looked over in surprise. This was the first time Poplar Fruit's emotions had fluctuated since he saw her in the afternoon. Before this, every sigh of hers made him panic, giving him the feeling that her heart was already dead. I didn't beat him up. I even helped him chase away the people who tried to rob him. Poplar Fruit explained with a smile, I'm just worried that this might be a conspiracy. Duan Shueching didn't know if it was a conspiracy or not, but she still couldn't help but say to Poplar Fruit. He didn't say. After saying that, Duan Shueching returned to her silent state. After that, even when she was with Poplar Fruit, she sat quietly. Some words were like a breeze that brushed past her ears, and she didn't care about them. Chapter 8:45. Poplar Fruit and Kiki took the high-speed train back to Yangqing at 9 p.m. With Duan Shueching's personality, she had her own opinions. Poplar Fruit wanted to stay and persuade her to let it go, but he didn't expect her to persuade Poplar Fruit to go back. I'm fine, I don't need you. Duan Shueching's words could be considered as persuasion. She was never good with words, and if she spoke, it meant that she cared. If she was angry with someone, she would definitely ignore them. Poplar Fruit bitterly smiled and shook his head. He didn't believe that Duan Shueching would be able to walk out of this relationship so easily. He knew that Duan Shueching might seem cold and emotionless, but she was actually more passionate than most people. Otherwise, she wouldn't have left Yangqing because of Poplar Fruit's rejection. Don't keep it in your heart. Poplar Fruit sighed and said, go out and see the sun. Forget about him and start afresh. Don't hurt your body. You have to eat when it's time to eat and rest when it's time to rest. Is it worth it for a person who lied to you? Yangqing tried to persuade her. I know you won't listen to me, so I'll go back to Yangcheng first. If you think it through or want to come over to Yangcheng to play, don't forget to contact me. When Yangqing left, Duan Shueching stood up to send him off. She seemed to have regained some of her energy. She even stood at the door, graceful and elegant, like a weeping willow by a lake, swaying slightly in the autumn wind. Poplar Fruit was behind the car. He turned around and sighed, I'm afraid it won't be that easy. Pai Dinwan, that bastard, he's too despicable. Although he had only intruded into the Duan Shueching's world for less than 5 months, which was longer than the 5 years that the Poplar Fruit had spent, he had caused the Duan Shueching, who had already been injured, to be injured again. Moreover, the injury was even more serious and deeper. Winter is coming. I hope you won't freeze your heart with the cold winter. You should forget the past and hold on to your hope. You should wait until the ice melts and the snow melts next year. You should wait until the spring flowers are brilliant. You should wait until the spring water gurgles. You should wait until the ice mountain snow lotus blooms again. Poplar Fruit didn't continue arguing with Duan Shueching. He was in a hurry to take the high-speed rail home, and even had dinner on the train. Kiki was in high spirits. Along the way, she was telling him about how beautiful the children's playground built by the pregnant auntie was. Papa, Kiki wants it too. The little girl blinked her big watery eyes and said to her father, in that case, Kiki can also ask her brothers and sisters to come over to play. That will depend on your performance. Poplar Fruit smiled slightly and said, if Kiki is obedient and sensible, and doesn't throw tantrums with Papa and Sister Bebe, then Papa will build one for you. It was just a children's playground, not a large amusement park. If Poplar Fruit wanted to build one, he could divide half of the room that was originally set aside for Kiki in the new house, put tatami mats on it by some big blocks, plastic balls, and some small castles that could be climbed up and down, equipped with some small slides and small bridges. It wouldn't cost more than tens of thousands of yuan. Kiki has always been very obedient. Kiki pouted her small mouth. pulled her father's finger and acted like a spoiled child. After a while, she changed the topic and excitedly told her father about her new experience today. Sister Xuanxuan's belly is big, even bigger than Kiki's. She said that there is a baby in her belly. Fortunately, Kiki's ability to understand was not bad. She was not like some children in stories, who were so scared that they thought that the baby was swallowed. That's right, Poplar Fruit said with a smile. In a few months, a baby will be born. When it grows up, it will be just like Kiki. Was Kiki also born in Mama Ma's belly? Kiki asked. But Kiki has never seen Mama Ma. When she said that, her tone was just a little curious and regretful. But there was no sadness. Kiki was still too young. How could she know what sadness was? In her heart, Papa was everything, and Mama Ma was just a person that Papa told Kiki. She did not envy other children for having Mama Ma, because she still had Sister Bebe to love her. Poplar Fruit smiled, gently stroked Kiki's hair, and said meaningfully, Mama Ma is no longer here, but she has always been looking at Kiki from afar, hoping that Kiki can grow up happily, and in the future, be as beautiful as Mama Ma. Kiki knows. Kiki nodded solemnly and said, Kiki wants to be as beautiful as Mama Ma. Poplar Fruit had shown her a photo of Wu Yu, and he had never hidden the matter of Kiki's birth mother. As Kiki gradually became more sensible, he would tell Kiki more stories about her Mama Ma. To be honest, Wu Yu was indeed a great beauty, and Poplar Fruit was also stunned when he saw the photo. The real person he saw was Wu Yu when she was preparing to give birth to Kiki. In comparison, Wu Yu before she was pregnant was not much worse than Duan Xueqing. They chatted on the high-speed train, and in the end, Kiki could not resist the strong sleepiness. When they were about to reach the station, she swayed and fell asleep in her father's arms. Poplar Fruit's return was a pleasant surprise, and Fong Bebe was so happy that she wanted to pick him up. But in the end, Poplar Fruit refused. The night was different from the day, and Poplar Fruit was worried about his girlfriend going out alone. At that time, he smiled and said to Fong Bebe, when you learn how to drive, then you can come and pick us up. When he returned home, Fong Bebe was already sitting on the chair in the dining room waiting for him. Poplar Fruit could see the deep tiredness in her eyes. You're back today. Poplar Fruit had a smile in his eyes, and gently hugged Fong Bebe in his arms. With his mouth, he lifted Fong Bebe's bangs and gently kissed her forehead. I'll carry Kiki to the bed. Fong Bebe whispered to Poplar Fruit, have you bathed her? Not yet. Forget it. I'll bathe her tomorrow. She's sleeping soundly, Poplar Fruit said, and put the luggage aside. When Fong Bebe came out, Poplar Fruit sat on the sofa, waved to Fong Bebe, and said with a smile, Baby, come here. Without Kiki, Fong Bebe's little temper appeared again. She pouted her red lips and dragged her feet, unwilling to come over. Are you still angry with me? Poplar Fruit pretended to sigh and said, without a plane ticket, I've already rushed home on the high-speed train. How come there's no reward at all? It's obviously you. Fong Bebe came closer, sullenly refuted. But suddenly she was pulled into Poplar Fruit's arms and could not help but scream. She was turned over by Poplar Fruit, and her back was against Poplar Fruit's embrace, and her hands were pressed by Poplar Fruit on her lower abdomen. Her face was flushed, but her body was soft, and locked in Poplar Fruit's embrace, unwilling to resist. You're a rogue, Fong Bebe whispered in Poplar Fruit's ear, as if she was protesting, but it was more like a tender whisper between lovers. Chapter 846. Fong Bebe was actually very easy to coax. After Poplar Fruit cuddled with her for a while, she was no longer angry. The two of them rubbed each other's ears and hair, sticking to each other on the sofa until Fong Bebe began to yawn. You go take a shower, it's time to sleep. Fong Bebe pushed Poplar Fruit's big hand and said lazily, Let's go take a shower together? Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Take a shower, your uncle. Fong Bebe blushed and jumped out of Poplar Fruit's arms. She picked up the pillow on the sofa and threw it at Poplar Fruit. Who wants to take a shower with you? Poplar Fruit laughed and fled to the bathroom to take a shower. When he came out, Fong Beibei was helping him pack his luggage. His clothes were neatly stacked on top of each other. Kiki's milk bottle and other utensils were also placed in a basket on the dining table. They would be left for tomorrow when they were free to use boiling water to disinfect them. Looking at her concentrated look, and even couldn't help but yawn while packing, Poplar Fruit was in a trance, as if he saw his vigorous but virtuous and hard-working mother. At this moment, wasn't Fong Beibei also like a little wife? Poplar Fruit felt warm in his heart. Darling wife. Poplar Fruit squatted down, smiled and helped Fong Beibei to tidy up her hair, and said, "Why don't you pack tomorrow? Look at you, your forehead is sweating. Pack up early. Put it in the suitcase. It will smell tomorrow." Fong Beibei explained, and then she yawned again. Today, she seemed to be like Poplar Fruit. She didn't sleep at noon, probably because her heart was stuffed and she couldn't sleep. Poplar Fruit pulled Fong Beibei up from the ground and said with a smile, "Well, leave the rest to me. You go wash up. It's late. It's time to sleep." Fong Beibei nodded obediently. After brushing her teeth and washing her face, she was full of energy again. It was rare for Poplar Fruit to climb into bed early to sleep with Fong Beibei. Originally, the two of them were lying face to face, so there was still some space between them. Fong Beibei mumbled and rolled over. Her hair scattered and she laughed as she squeezed herself into Poplar Fruit's embrace. At this moment, she became as mischievous as Kiki. She used her hair to brush Poplar Fruit's nose, rested her head on Poplar Fruit's arm, and even grabbed the other hand of Poplar Fruit. Warm and soft body, smooth skin, and pleasant fragrance. Poplar Fruit was teased by her to the point that he couldn't stand it. He quickly used his hand to press down on Fong Beibei, who was moving around. "Baby, if you mess around again, I'll eat you." Poplar Fruit smiled and said softly in Fong Beibei's ear. The man's warm breath sprayed on the crystal-clear small ear. Fong Beibei suddenly half of her body softened. She said softly, "No, you can't cross the line. But you're the one who's teasing me." Poplar Fruit's lips curled up and said with a smile. Fong Beibei was about to speak. Suddenly, her body stiffened, and then her whole body softened, lying in Poplar Fruit's arms, burying her head. A soft moan floated in the night wind, as if the moonlight had become swaying. Poplar Fruit had gently kissed Fong Beibei's ear, kissing her white and delicate neck. "Don't move." Fong Beibei quickly turned around, facing Poplar Fruit, but still in Poplar Fruit's arms, gently patted Poplar Fruit's chest, and said in a sweet voice. Poplar Fruit's eyes had a smile, and looked at Fong Beibei, but didn't say anything. The affection in his eyes was like the sea of stars in the sky, so rich that it wanted to swallow her. Fong Beibei understood the meaning of Poplar Fruit, but her eyes were filled with hesitation, as if she was still a little flustered. Looking at Poplar Fruit's eyes, there was helplessness and worry. She was worried that if she refused, her lover would be unhappy. But how could Poplar Fruit not be happy? He also understood his girlfriend's reluctance, smiled, and reached out to touch Fong Beibei's cheeks, and gently said, "Take your time." Fong Beibei sweetly turned around again, and leaned against Poplar Fruit's arms, lying on her side. Her heart was calm, as if she didn't need to worry anymore, and Poplar Fruit didn't move again. Fong Beibei took the initiative to hug Poplar Fruit's arm, and let him hug her lower abdomen. Even if the action was intimate, she still felt at ease. "Okay. Go to sleep, you're sleepy," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. "I'm not sleepy. I'm not sleepy. Talk to me again," Fong Beibei said coquettishly. She was still in high spirits after the commotion just now. "What do you want to talk about?" Poplar Fruit asked softly from behind her. "Tell me, what did you do these days?" Fong Beibei said with a smile. "Yes, I met the great director Lien and watched 2 movies. Poplar Fruit said with a smile. The first one was Li En's new movie, but they didn't let Kiki in, so I watched it alone. The second one was to apologize to Zhang Yujia. She's the editor-in-chief of the publishing house that I told you about. But she played Glacier Century. Kiki especially liked it and laughed until her stomach cramped. Why do you want to apologize? Fong Beibei's heart tightened, and she began to feel sour. But, thinking that Poplar Fruit told her frankly, it meant that he didn't have a guilty conscience and she should believe him. Originally, I was going to watch the first movie with her, but then Kiki made a big fuss, so she had to go out and help me take care of Kiki. Poplar Fruit smiled and touched Fong Beibei's head. He just heard his girlfriend's emotional fluctuations. Don't be jealous. I'm innocent. I know what else is fun. Fong Beibei muttered and said, Then I met with the beasts I told you. Poplar Fruit said with a smile, What about Senior Duan Shueching? Fong Beibei asked, That's not fun. Poplar Fruit said, I want to hear it. Fong Beibei said coquettishly, There's no harm in telling you, but it's fine as long as you hear it. Poplar Fruit said softly, he was not worried that Fong Beibei would spread it everywhere, but it was related to Duan Shueching's feelings. He and Fong Beibei, two outsiders, should not talk too much about it. After a moment, Fong Beibei turned around, opened her eyes, and looked at Poplar Fruit sadly, as if she was about to cry. Senior sister, so pitiful. Yes. Poplar Fruit sighed and said, Paidin one is really hateful. Deceiving people. I'm scared too. Fong Beibei murmured. She seemed to be afraid of Duan Shueching, but in fact, she was revealing her true feelings. Idiot. What are you afraid of? Poplar Fruit chuckled. Don't you have me by your side? I'll protect you. Whoever dares to lie to you, I'll beat him up. You're the one I'm afraid of. Fong Beibei snorted and laughed disdainfully. Fong Beibei was still quite satisfied with Poplar Fruit's answer. She raised her head and kissed Poplar Fruit on the mouth, smiling. She also walked out of that inexplicable mood. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, Go to sleep. Fong Beibei found a comfortable position and fell asleep sweetly. Chapter 847. The next day, Poplar Fruit sent Kiki to his godmother, Lu Suqin. On one hand, his godmother missed Kiki. On the other hand, Poplar Fruit was going to watch a movie with Fong Beibei today. It wasn't that Poplar Fruit didn't want to pay for Kiki to go with them, but he recently read a book on parenting, and there was a very reasonable point in it. It was to tell parents not to follow their children all the time, which was not conducive to the development of their children's personality. Parents should let their children understand that parents also have their own work and living space. Poplar Fruit. Wait a minute. Lu Suqin asked the old man to accompany Kiki first. She excitedly pulled Poplar Fruit to the side and asked with a smile, Let me ask you, did Jiwen have that thing recently? That thing? Poplar Fruit was a little confused and asked, you don't even understand? It's just that his heart is budding, and he's looking for a girlfriend again. Lu Suqin patted Poplar Fruit's head and said with disappointment, What kind of mother would say that to her own son? Poplar Fruit's head drooped down a few black lines. He thought about it, shook his head and said, I don't think so. He hasn't had a girlfriend recently. I haven't seen him bring a woman back for nearly half a year. Recently, Song Jiwen had been circling around Chen Anlin. The two of them had been thinking about how to get close to uncles and aunties through square dancing every day. However, it seemed that they were going to watch a movie today. Song Jiwen heard that Poplar Fruit was going to watch 4 movies with his girlfriend today, and they also wanted to come and relax. If there was a possibility, it would only be Chen Anlin who was his girlfriend. However, Poplar Fruit denied this idea. This was because Song Jiwen and Chen Anlin were like fire and water. From the beginning, Song Jiwen and Chen Anlin would quarrel whenever they met. They lived across from each other, and even now, although they opened a Tai Chi dojo together, they would quarrel again after a few words. Sometimes it wasn't even because they had different opinions. How could this be? Lu Suqin said with a gloomy face. Could it be that Jiwen was affected by that incident and doesn't want to be in a relationship anymore? Wouldn't our Song family line be cut off? Poplar Fruit smiled and comforted her. Godmother, don't worry. I noticed that his complexion had been pretty good recently, and he seemed to be in high spirits. He didn't spend all his time gaming, so it was obvious that he had already walked out of his trauma. Just wait patiently for a while. He'll be back with his girlfriend soon. Really? Lu Suqin couldn't stop laughing at Yang Guo's words. She asked, okay, I'm not in a hurry. Jiwen, let's talk about you. I saw on the news that you already have a girlfriend. Where is your girlfriend from? What kind of people are in your family? When are you going to bring her to godmother? The last time I called your mom, she was so happy. Poplar Fruit smiled bitterly. He knew that too. His mom would call him every few days to ask about her daughter-in-law. However, Poplar Fruit would only tell her that the news was true, and that it wasn't time to bring her home yet. Fong Beibei hadn't agreed yet. This little girl was so shy. She's also from our school. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, she doesn't dare to meet my parents yet. Godmother, wait for a while. Once I convince her, I'll definitely bring her to meet you. Lu Suqin was satisfied and let Poplar Fruit leave. Poplar Fruit went back to pick up Fong Beibei, and then brought the 2/3 wheels to the cinema. Don't worry about them. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, these two guys are just here to join in the fun. I bought the tickets and sent them far away. Yes, we definitely won't disturb you too. Song Jiwen crawled his head over from the back seat and chuckled. The seats are dozens of meters apart. Come back. Your butt is so high up. Chun Anlin grabbed Song Jiwen's clothes and pulled him back. She smiled and said, look at your wretched appearance. Beibei, ignore him. Chun Anlin explained to Fong Beibei with a smile, we're not here to disturb your date. You can watch the movie later. Don't worry about us. We're sitting very far away. Fong Beibei said a little embarrassedly, Sister Anlin, no, I don't care. It's more lively if we come out to play together. Poplar Fruit laughed happily. He knew that Fong Beibei was actually a little reluctant. He was also reluctant. Who would want to have 2/3 wheels following their girlfriend on a date? When he came back yesterday, he asked Song Jiwen to help buy the movie tickets. The movie tickets that Fong Beibei had bought had been refunded. In the end, this guy told Chin Anlin, and the two of them secretly bought 4 tickets. There was no other way. They shamelessly stuck to him, and Poplar Fruit couldn't chase them away. Fortunately, these two guys were reasonable and didn't buy 4 movie tickets. After talking to Poplar Fruit for a long time, Poplar Fruit reluctantly agreed to let them come. After getting out of the car, Chun Anlin hurriedly dragged Song Jiwen to buy snacks and drinks for everyone. Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei followed behind holding hands. The two of them looked at each other and smiled. It's okay. If you get to know them more, you'll find that these two friends are actually very good people. They're usually carefree, but in fact, they're very enthusiastic. Poplar Fruit smiled. Although Fong Beibei had already met them, she still wasn't very familiar with them. Okay. Fong Beibei smiled sweetly, looked at Poplar Fruit and said, just treat it as a date. 2 couples, it's quite interesting. Poplar Fruit shook his head and said with a smile, no, they just want to come out and play with us. Recently, they've been so busy with their dojo that they're dizzy. They're not a couple. Don't be fooled by their smiles. They'll quarrel again later. Before he finished speaking, Chun Anlin's angry shout came from afar. I asked you to bring a few drinks and you didn't even want to do it? Are you still a man? No, can't we just bring it over together? Song Jiwen argued. 2 people, 4 hands, 4 cups of cola and 4 buckets of popcorn. Do you think we can carry it all? Chun Anlin sneered and retorted, you're the one who's slacking off. Why can't we carry it all? Song Jiwen gestured and said, the cola can be carried in a bag and can be carried in 1 hand. There are 4 buckets of popcorn. I'll carry 3 buckets and you carry 1 bucket with the cola. Can't you do such a simple calculation? Why do you carry such a light one and I carry such a heavy one? Chin Anlin said unhappily. The focus of their quarrel had unknowingly changed a little. You practice martial arts, so you have so much strength. Wouldn't it be a pity if you don't make full use of it? Song Jiwen said somewhat proudly. Making use of a girl as a man, you have the nerve to say that? Chun Anlin's violent temper was provoked by Song Jiwen. She shouted angrily, completely ignoring the gazes of the people around them. Forget it, I'll go get it myself. Poplar Fruit and Fong Bebe smiled and walked towards them hand in hand. Chapter 848. Of the 4 movies that he watched with Fong Bebe, the first one, Twilight, Breaking Dawn, was boring to Poplar Fruit. However, Fong Bebe enjoyed it. It was indeed a commercial blockbuster that captured the desires of women all over the world. The second one was a romance film called The Longest Hug. However, it was obvious that the director's storytelling skills were not good enough. A story about family, love, and the warmth between strangers should have moved people to tears. But Poplar Fruit always felt that this plain pace made him feel a little bored. Perhaps the potential value of the movie was still there. For example, the male protagonist who had lost his arms acted as himself, which reflected the tragedy and struggle of the male protagonist very well. Or the inspiration behind the story. But now that commercialization was becoming more and more mainstream, it was very difficult for mediocre literary films to be successful. Even if it was a literary film, it should borrow some narrative techniques from commercial films to tell the story with more waves and edit the scenes to be more exciting. After watching the movie, Yonggu didn't feel moved, but she did have a deeper thought about her future and the future of New Translation Road Publishing House. She couldn't abandon the market and stubbornly act like a hipster. This movie is not very good. Fong Bebe stretched, showing her curves. She turned her head and said to Poplar Fruit, "What's the next one?" "Spy movie." Poplar Fruit did not even look at the movie ticket. He said with a smile, "It's time to change the venue. The next one is in Hall 13. This is what you like to watch." Fong Bebe stepped on the armchair barefoot, holding a high-heeled sandal in one hand. She imitated Kiki and put her arms around Poplar Fruit's neck. She said with a smile, "I want a hug too." Yonggu smiled faintly. His strong and powerful arm gently rested on her perky buttocks, and Fong Bebe was lifted up by him. Fong Bebe's face was flushed, but she still adapted to Poplar Fruit's movements. In the strange eyes of the people next to them, Fong Bebe buried her face in Poplar Fruit's neck and did not dare to raise her head. Poplar Fruit laughed and showed off their affection without any scruples. "Wow, do you want to do this?" Song Jiwen's annoying voice came. Fong Bebe heard it and quickly struggled out of Poplar Fruit's arms shyly. She lowered her head and her hair covered her face. She did not dare to look at them. "I say, aren't you wicked? They are loving each other. What did they do to you? Why do you have to scare them?" Chun Anlin said what Poplar Fruit was thinking. The 4 of them played for a while, bought new snacks and drinks, and were about to enter. Fong Bebe pulled Poplar Fruit's hand and whispered embarrassedly, "Uncle, I want to go to the toilet." "Then you go in first. I'll accompany the baby to the toilet." Poplar Fruit waved his hand to Song Jiwen and said, "Do you want to go?" Chun Anlin looked at Song Jiwen and asked, "No." Song Jiwen shook his head. "Then you go in first. I want to go too." Chun Anlin stuffed the food into Song Jiwen's hands and quickly caught up with Poplar Fruit. Song Jiwen looked at the sound of Chun Anlin leaving and frowned. He took a sip of soda and muttered, "Could it be that he sneaked away and left me to watch the movie alone?" Turned out that he was thinking too much. Before the movie started, Chun Anlin had already returned. The movie started. This movie was indeed the best movie that Poplar Fruit had seen today. Even Fong Bebe was watching it without blinking. The movie's rhythm was really good. From the beginning, the male lead Mo Min mysteriously appeared in an iceberg to gain experience, which attracted the audience's attention. Then the scenes kept changing. Puzzles and conspiracies were thrown out one after another, causing the entire movie to fall into a suffocating atmosphere. Fong Bebe had not watched the previous few movies, so her understanding of the plot was not as deep as Poplar Fruit's. However, with Poplar Fruit's concise explanation, she also became nervous like the main character. Especially when the main character was attacked by a drone missile and the entire subsidy station was blown up. He was standing on the edge of the cliff of life and death. At this time, Fong Bebe was tensed up. She held Poplar Fruit's hand and was so nervous that Poplar Fruit had to pat her on the shoulder to relax her. The Bourne Identity 4 was a commercial blockbuster, but it was good. The whole movie was full of passion and there was no place to pee. Then, Song Ji-wen was in for a tragedy. He regretted it. He should not have not gone to the toilet before the movie started. He should not have drunk so much soda. This fucker. He actually wanted to go to the toilet halfway through the movie. However, the movie was at the most exciting part. Hold it in, hold it in. He could not hold it in anymore. He drank a lot of water in the previous 2 scenes. He could not hold it in anymore. I need to go to the toilet. Song Ji-wen stood up with a sullen face and squeezed past Chun Anlin. Chun Anlin looked at him curiously and thought, when did this guy become so cold? Could it be that, after watching the movie, he also learned to act cool like the main character? If Song Ji-wen knew what she was thinking, he would definitely vomit blood. How am I acting cool? However, he could not hold it in anymore and could only leave with a red face. If he continued to nag as usual, he would probably leak before he reached the toilet. His expression was cold, but the lights were too dim for Chun Anlin to see Song Ji-wen's expression. Where's the toilet? Where's the toilet? Song Ji-wen bent over and hugged his stomach as he walked forward. Poplar Fruit saw him walk past and wanted to greet him, but Song Ji-wen ignored him and went straight to the door. There was no toilet in the theater. Song Ji-wen informed the attendant and hurried to the nearest toilet. When he reached the toilet, Song Ji-wen blacked out again. Fuck! Since when did the men's toilet have a queue? It could not be helped. The movie was really good. Everyone looked like they had not been holding it in for long. Coincidentally, there was no big fight just now, so they all ran out. Luckily, the queue was not very long. Song Ji-wen gritted his teeth and did not look for another toilet. Wait a minute. The sooner I go to the toilet, the sooner I can go back to watch the movie. Hold it in. Hold it in. The queue was getting shorter and shorter, and behind Song Ji-wen, there was a queue as well. Song Ji-wen held it in until he was about to stomp his feet. Finally, he saw the end. A man in front of him walked in. Song Ji-wen stood at the door and let out a sigh of relief. He knew that he was next. Finally, the person in the toilet came out too. Song Ji-wen was overjoyed and prepared to take a step forward. At this moment, a man suddenly elbowed Song Ji-wen and was about to squeeze in front of Song Ji-wen. Ouch! You dare to cut in Grandpa Song's line? Song Ji-wen was furious. He used a standard basketball elbow and hit the man in the ribs. The man felt pain and took 2 steps back. Song Ji-wen glanced at him proudly, then went to the toilet and closed the door. Fuck you! You dare to touch me? The man who was elbowed by Song Ji-wen was stunned for a moment. He jumped up angrily and slammed the toilet door, roaring, "Get out here! If I don't cripple you today, my surname is not Kong." Chapter 849. Chun Anlin watched the movie for a while. Suddenly, a trace of doubt flashed in her eyes. She suddenly realized that Song Ji-wen had been out for a long time and had not returned. That's not right, Chun Anlin thought with a frown. Why does it take so long to go to the toilet? Could it be that he's constipated? Of course, she was only complaining in her heart. In reality, she was still looking in the direction that Song Ji-wen had left in. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Chun Anlin saw something unusual. There were a few people at the exit of the theater, and 1 or 2 audience members wanted to leave their seats to see what was going on. Wasn't the plot in the GC stage now? If they weren't watching the movie, what was there to see? Chun Anlin was a martial arts practitioner. Like Poplar Fruit, her 6th sense was stronger than ordinary people. However, at this time, it had nothing to do with her 6th sense. She had a faint feeling that Song Ji-wen was related to this unusual situation. Moreover, she felt a little uneasy. Unable to sit still, Chun Anlin did not care about the movie that she could not move her head away from just now. She stood up and walked towards the door. Anlin, Poplar Fruit was watching the movie. From the corner of his eye, he saw Chun Anlin walk past. Before he could turn his head, Chun Anlin had already walked past him in a hurry. You're going to the toilet too? Didn't you just go? Poplar Fruit shook his head. Forget it, he would ignore the 2 of them. Watch the movie. Watch the movie. Back to just now, Song Jiwen had just finished peeing. Then, he walked out of the bathroom in a relaxed and refreshed manner. He was just about to wash his hands. Unexpectedly, as soon as he walked out, he was grabbed by the collar by an angry short and fat man. The short and fat man had a buzz cut and a fierce face. He was the guy who wanted to cut the queue and go to the toilet before Song Jiwen. He waited for Song Jiwen to come out and immediately rushed forward. He grabbed Song Jiwen's collar and started scolding him. Originally, Song Jiwen wanted to reason with him. However, he didn't expect this short fatty to curse so harshly. With just 2 sentences, he cursed his entire family and even his ancestors. What made Song Jiwen even angrier was that the short fatty not only scolded Song Jiwen, but also slapped him in the face. If Song Jiwen had not dodged quickly, he would have suffered. Fuck. Song Jiwen's anger was ignited. Although he was the son of an official, he used to be a troublemaker. After college, he often got into fights. However, he gradually became better. Now that he had become a civil servant and lived like a prince, his skills were no longer as good as before. However, Chin Anlin had forced him to run around outside every day, so he had mostly recovered. Motherfucker. Who are you scolding? Song Jiwen was unforgiving and scolded back. He shoved the short fatty. With his big body, the short fatty was pushed back. Were you the one who cut the line just now? Why are you scolding me for cutting the line? Go to the back and line up obediently. The short fatty looked at the mocking eyes of the people around him and was annoyed. He rolled up his sleeves and was about to rush forward. Song Jiwen flew up and almost kicked the short fatty. The short fatty was so scared that he dodged a few meters away. Song Jiwen pointed at him proudly and said, "Don't talk nonsense here. Let's fight. TSK, half crippled. Who can you beat?" The short fatty was angry. He was already gnashing his teeth in anger. Now, he felt even more humiliated. However, he really couldn't beat Song Jiwen in a fight. You wait. The short fatty didn't even go to the toilet. He turned around and went into the theater. Song Jiwen didn't take it to heart. He just shook his head, turned around and washed his hands. He was ready to go back and watch the movie. However, just as he reached the entrance of the theater, he was blocked by a 1.8-meter-tall man. The man's skin was very dark, almost as dark as a black man. Looking at his muscles, Song Jiwen's scalp tingled. Where are you going? The short fatty laughed and walked out from behind the big man. I'm telling you, if I don't beat you half to death today, my surname isn't Kong. Who cares if your surname is Kong? The other party wasn't stupid and knew how to find help. However, Song Jiwen wasn't stupid either. It was obvious that he couldn't beat the big man. He turned around and wanted to escape. Black Ox, help me catch him. The short fatty saw that Song Jiwen was about to run and shouted excitedly. The big man had big muscles and was very agile. He grabbed Song Jiwen with both arms and lifted Song Jiwen up. Song Jiwen's legs were off the ground and he kicked wildly. He felt that his arms were about to break. Ah! Ah! Song Jiwen couldn't help but cry out in pain. He looked at the short fatty with hatred in his eyes and roared, "Let go of me. If you dare to touch me, I'm telling you, you're going to stay in jail tonight. Where I'm going to stay is not up to you," the short fatty said contemptuously. "But I know that you're going to stay in the hospital tonight." Black Bull. Originally, Black Bull wanted to fight, but as soon as the short fat man moved his legs, he stopped. He calmly rubbed his 2 legs and said with an ugly expression, "Hold him down first. When I come back from the bathroom, I'll teach him a lesson." After that, he wriggled and jumped in the direction of the bathroom. Song Jiwen didn't give up struggling, but the more he struggled, the more pain his arms were in. It seemed that if the big man exerted a little more strength, his arms would be dislocated. The pain was so severe that Song Jiwen couldn't help but cry out, "Ah! Ah! Don't stand here and block the entrance of the audience." The waiter guarding the door didn't dare to provoke the big man, so he could only persuade them weakly. The big man snorted and moved outside with Song Jiwen in his arms. Song Jiwen screamed even louder in pain. The few people who came back from the bathroom knew about the conflict just now. They didn't dare to say anything and quickly left. But not all of them left. A few of them secretly stood at the door with the waiter and watched. After a while, the short fatty came back from the bathroom. He had a morbid excitement on his face. He twisted his arms and walked toward Song Jiwen. Chen Anlin just came out. She saw Song Jiwen being caught by the big man and the short fatty punching him in the stomach. Pain. Song Jiwen didn't even have time to cry out in pain. He spat out some of the cola he had just drunk onto the short fatty. Fuck. 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 If I don't beat you to death today, my surname isn't Kong. The short fatty stomped his feet and shouted angrily. Anyway, with the big black yak around, he was full of confidence. Bang! A delicate shout was heard. Suddenly, the shadow of a foot flew through the air and kicked the big man's arm. The big man felt the pain and let go of both hands. Song Jiwen fell to the ground. A pair of white and tender hands stretched out in front of Song Jiwen. He looked up and saw Chen Anlin's childish face in front of him. She helped him up. Fuck! He was saved by a beauty today. Chapter 850. His lifetime of brilliance had been destroyed here. Song Jiwen felt that he had lost all his dignity. As a man, he was beaten up by others, and he needed a woman to help him. However, Song Jiwen did not have the time to be shy. He had just been punched in the stomach by the short fatty. His stomach was in pain, and he could not stand steadily. When Chen Anlin wanted to help him, he felt a tearing pain in his shoulder joints. He could not help but roar. He was too ashamed to face anyone. Chen Anlin's clear voice sounded in Song Jiwen's ears. Don't move. Song Jiwen was stunned. Suddenly, his two arms were pulled by Chen Anlin's brute force. He heard a cracking sound, and he felt a sharp pain. Ah! Song Jiwen could not help but cry out in pain again. However, after shouting, he was surprised to find that his arms did not hurt anymore. He only felt a little bit of ma. Get up! Chen Anlin coolly patted Song Jiwen's head, who was half squatting, and walked in front of him. Who are you? The short fatty asked in surprise. He couldn't see it clearly, but the big guy was indeed kicked back by the girl. Chen Anlin did not pay attention to his question. She crossed her hands, and her knuckles cracked. She stepped in front of the short fatty domineeringly and snorted. Who dares to bully my man? Stand up. Hey, when did I become your man? The short fatty was shocked by Chen Anlin. At this time, Song Jiwen weakly interrupted. He was hit in the stomach. Hey, I'm standing up for you. Are you unhappy? Chen Anlin turned around. It seemed that to fight foreign aggression, one must first settle the internal affairs. Although the big guy was hindered just now, the short fatty did not take Chen Anlin seriously. After all, how good could a girl be at fighting? The big guy had already stood up for him. If he bullied my daughter, the short fatty felt that he would not have the face to see anyone anymore. My daughter? Couldn't be helped. Chen Anlin wasn't tall, and she had a cute child's face. Her voice was also crisp, and there was a hint of a childish ending sound unique to the North. She sounded no different from an underage girl. Bullying underage kids was what the short fatty was good at. Because he was not tall enough, he could only bully children. The short fatty did not feel embarrassed at all. He jumped up and was about to slap Chen Anlin's delicate and cute face. He shouted, so what if I'm bullying you? I even bullied you. Song Jiwen looked up and saw it, but his body didn't have time to react. His voice had just sounded, be careful. Chen Anlin turned sideways to face the short and fat man. Her big watery eyes flashed with a trace of sharpness. She stepped back sideways, made a yin-yang fish arc with both hands, and used the force to throw the short and fat man. The short and fat man didn't have time to react. He only felt that his body was involuntarily pulled by a rotating force, and he fell back uncontrollably. Like a wild goose landing on flat sand, his chubby but hit the ground and slid far away. The big guy, who didn't talk much, roared and waved his big fist to hit Chen Anlin's head. He didn't know any martial arts moves, and he relied on brute force. But looking at the momentum, it was scary enough. Chen Anlin snorted. Her slender waist twisted like a fried dough twist. Her body swayed rapidly and dodged the big guy's fist. She wanted to use the strength of her opponent's punch to throw him back like the short fatty did just now. However, when she grabbed the big guy's thick arm, Chen Anlin was surprised to find that her force didn't work on the big guy. The big guy was too strong. She didn't know if he was a professional weightlifter, but he actually stabilized himself after swaying a little. It wasn't that her kung fu wasn't good enough. Chen Anlin's kung fu was one of the best in their generation. It was just that girls were at a disadvantage in terms of strength. If it were poplar fruit, not to mention swaying, it was possible that the big guy would directly fly to the door with just a simple push. Song Jiwen watched in horror. He knew how strong the big guy opposite him was. If he were to land a punch on Chen Anlin's body, her bones would probably be broken. Gritting his teeth, Song Jiwen also rushed up. He wasn't good at fighting, but he was smart and had rich fighting experience. He took advantage of the big guy's fist to fly up and kick between the big guy's legs. In fact, Chen Anlin wasn't in as much danger as Song Jiwen thought. Her body was very flexible. When she couldn't drag the big guy anymore, she immediately let go of her hand and dodged the big guy's fist. She also threw a kick, but it was aimed at the big guy's abdomen. Originally, this kick wouldn't cause much damage to the big guy, but Chen Anlin still had a trick up her sleeve. She was going to jump up and kick the big guy's neck. If she controlled it well, she could knock the big guy out. However, Song Jiwen's kick arrived first. He used a lot of strength. The big guy groaned and clamped his legs together. His dark face turned blue. Chen Anlin's kick also flew over. Because of the severe pain in his lower body, the big guy let go of the defense of his abdomen. He was kicked solidly and fell back. Song Jiwen couldn't dodge in time and was pressed to the ground by the big guy. Chen Anlin laughed. She pushed the big guy away and rescued Song Jiwen. At this time, the big guy was still covering his crotch. His face was like the ground and he couldn't speak. Black ox! Black ox! The short fat man got up and pulled the big guy. He looked at Song Jiwen and Chen Anlin in horror. They were usually the ones bullying others. When had they ever seen someone other than the police beat them up so badly? Fortunately, Song Jiwen didn't kick completely. The big guy took a while to recover from the pain. We admit defeat. Black ox. Let's go. The short fat man's expression changed. In the end, he gritted his teeth and pulled the big guy away. Song Jiwen breathed a sigh of relief. Just now, the big guy gave him too much pressure. Although he could find someone to catch them, he didn't want to be beaten up again before that. Just now, he was beaten and his stomach was still faintly aching. Chen Anlin heard Song Jiwen's cry. She said with some disdain, "You, too weak. You even need me to save you." Usually, she didn't hit her friends when they were down like this. Even when her friends were in trouble, she would be kind and gently comfort them. However, facing Song Jiwen, she couldn't help but ridicule him. Song Jiwen's face was gloomy. He said unconvinced, "I also helped you. If I didn't give him a kick to end his family line, he would have beaten you into a pig's head." You think I can't handle this stupid big guy?" Chen Anlin raised her head proudly and waved her hand. She said, "Let's not talk about this anymore. Let's go back and watch the movie." Chen Anlin and Song Jiwen entered one by one and passed by Poplar Fruit again. Poplar Fruit patted Fong Beibei and muttered to her, "Look at these two guys. They went to the toilet separately and came back together. Don't tell me that when the mosquito fell into the pit, and Lan went to pick him up?" "Hey, uncle, you're so disgusting," Fong Beibei said coquettishly. Chapter 851. While Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei were enjoying their movie date, Kiki and Lu Suqin were staring at each other on the luxurious sofa of the Song family. Lu Suqin was smiling, and the crow's feet at the corner of her eyes were trembling. She didn't seem to have any bad intentions. Kiki felt a little strange. Originally, her grandma was having fun with her. Why did she suddenly stare at her without saying anything? And her smile was so strange. Kiki. Lu Suchin took out an Alps lollipop from nowhere, smiled and shook it in front of Kiki's eyes, and said seductively, "Grandma has a lollipop. Kiki, do you want one?" Kiki's eyes lit up, and she let go of the toy in her hands. Her two small arms swayed in the air, and her big eyes curved into crescents as she shouted, "Kiki wants. Kiki wants." Lollipops were delicious and sweet, and they could be eaten for a long time. Just thinking about it made Kiki's mouth water. "Then what does Kiki have to say?" Lu Suchin asked with a smile. Everything had to be done step by step. Kiki scratched her head and thought for a while. Her two small hands clenched into fists, and she raised them to her chin. She twisted her shoulders slightly, blinked her big eyes cutely, and said coquettishly, "Grandma, you're so beautiful. Can you give Kiki a lollipop, okay?" "Okay, okay." Moved by Kiki's cuteness, Lu Suchin said with a smile. Lu Suchin handed over the lollipop in her hand. When Kiki was about to grab it, Lu Suchin suddenly realized that something was wrong. She hadn't asked what she wanted to ask. Kiki cried out "Aya," and looked at her grandma in confusion. She didn't understand why the duck that was about to be in her mouth flew away again. No, Grandma still has a question to ask Kiki." Lu Suchin saw that Kiki began to pout and said quickly, "Grandma is so mean." Kiki said angrily, "Grandma, you're wrong. Grandma should be hit." Lu Suchin said shamefully. She took out another lollipop and smiled. "But, Kiki, if you answer one of my questions, I'll give you both lollipops." Kiki's gaze was attracted by the two lollipops. Her eyes were wide open, and she wanted to eat them with her eyes. Hearing her grandmother's words, Kiki didn't know what to do. After being cheated once, she didn't trust her grandmother anymore. However, the lollipop was too tempting. Kiki hesitantly stretched out her pinky and pouted. "Pinky promise, Grandma." "Okay. Pinky promise." Lu Suchin smiled and pinky promise with Kiki. At this time, Song Chunfong, who had just been sitting on the rattan chair in the living room and reading the newspaper, shook his head. He felt that his wife was too embarrassing. She actually used delicious food to trick a 2-year-old child to get information she wanted. He couldn't stand it anymore. He stretched his body and stood up to go outside for a walk. "Kiki," Lu Suchin said with a smile, "does your father have a girlfriend?" "Girlfriend?" Kiki blinked her eyes. She was a little confused. "Girlfriend is the woman that your father likes or loves." Lu Suchin could only explain. Kiki caught the keyword, love. When they were in Bali, not only Papa, but also big sister Bebe had explained to Kiki that love was to be together forever. So, girlfriend is the girl that Papa loves. Kiki couldn't tell the difference between a woman and a girl. "Kiki, does your father have a girlfriend?" Lu Suchin saw that Kiki was thinking in a daze, so she asked again. Suddenly, Chi-Chi's eyes were smiling as she said very happily, "Yes, Papa has a girlfriend." Lu Suchin smiled and asked, "Who is it? Who is your father's girlfriend?" "It's Kiki." Kiki raised her right index finger and proudly pointed to her beautiful little face. Thinking like this, it seemed to be right. Isn't there a saying that goes like this? A daughter is a father's lover in his previous life. Lu Suchin was stunned for a moment. Then she laughed and waved her hand. She said, "Other than Kiki? Does Daddy have any other girlfriends?" Kiki nodded without hesitation and said, "Yes. There is also big sister Bebe." Lu Suchin's eyes lit up. She felt that she was close to the truth. She asked, "Big sister Bebe? Who is big sister Bebe?" "Kiki's lollipop." Kiki couldn't stand being questioned. She was still looking at Plum to quench her thirst. She finally didn't want to cooperate. She pouted and stretched out her little hand to ask for it. It seemed that if the little girl couldn't get the lollipop, she didn't plan to cooperate anymore. However, Lu Suchin was an expert at taking care of children. Song Jiwen was so naughty, but he was still taught to be obedient. She smiled and handed a lollipop to Kiki. When Kiki was anxious and was about to make a fuss, Lu Suqin tore off the plastic of another lollipop and handed it to Kiki. She smiled and said, "Don't worry, Grandma will help you tear it off." Kiki couldn't wait to put the lollipop in her mouth. She licked it with her little tongue. Finally, she smiled happily. "Hurry up and face the wall if you have bad thoughts. This is a very pure plot." Kiki ate happily. Lu Suqin struck while the iron was hot and continued to ask, "Then, who is Big Sister Bebe?" Kiki held the lollipop in her right hand and licked it. From the sound of it, other people would think that this lollipop was some kind of exotic delicacy. She looked at her grandma strangely and said matter-of-factly, "Big Sister Bebe is Big Sister Bebe. Then, is your Big Sister Bebe pretty?" Lu Suqin asked. "Pretty. So pretty." Kiki took out the lollipop and said seriously. Then she continued to suck on it. "How old is she?" Kiki's eyes were a little confused. She stretched out her little hand, but didn't know how to count. She said vaguely, "Kiki is 2 years old." "Big Sister Bebe. Big Sister Bebe. Big Sister. Big Sister. Big Sister. Big Sister." How big was big? Lu Suqin didn't understand either, so she changed the question. "Where is she from? Where is she from?" Kiki didn't understand this question. That is, where does she live? Kiki's eyes lit up and said happily, "Kiki, Big Sister Bebe, and Papa live together." Although the answer was somewhat irrelevant, Lu Suqin's expression was still a little excited. She got a bigger piece of information. The two of them were actually living together. The questioning continued, and Lu Suqin, who was gossiping, couldn't stop. She felt that she had a sense of mission. She was asking for information for Poplar Fruit's mother, Big Sister Sue. Poplar Fruit didn't know that he was trying to help Fong Bebe hide it, but his daughter betrayed them both for 2 worthless lollipops. Until he went to pick up Kiki at night, Lu Suqin said to him while holding back her laughter, "Remember to bring your girlfriend home early to see." Poplar Fruit smiled honestly and said, I will persuade her when I have the chance." Chapter 852. The next day, Poplar Fruit received a call from his mother. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he realized that he had been sold out by his daughter. He honestly told his mother about his girlfriend and swore that he would try his best to convince her to bring her home next year. Only then did his mother give up on the idea of coming to Yangcheng to investigate. After returning to Yangcheng, Poplar Fruit didn't have to run around for almost a month. He returned to his normal state of work and study. For the past few nights, other than his usual 2 hours of translation work, Poplar Fruit was also busy organizing the framework of his new thesis into a draft. He was preparing to complete the homework Chun Zongdai assigned to him after he returned to Yangcheng. During the day, Poplar Fruit wasn't idle either. Sometimes he would substitute for the teachers in the school. Whether it was English grammar, reading, English and American literature, or German, French, Indonesian, or other small languages, Poplar Fruit would also appear in class from time to help the teachers. Although the outer court didn't lack teachers, Chun Zongdai obviously wanted Poplar Fruit to make use of every opportunity to train, so that he could be prepared for the next semester. Interestingly, perhaps because of Yanggua's fame, his substitute classes often attracted a lot of admirers. A few girls even specially went around to search for news of Yanggua's substitute classes every day, sparing no effort to find out where Yanggua would be substituting for him every day. However, later on, the students who followed Poplar Fruit's classes no longer followed Poplar Fruit's fame. Gradually, they became Poplar Fruit's true fans. Listening to Poplar Fruit's classes was a pleasure sometimes. You could feel the unique charm of this young man who never brought a lesson plan with him. Even though Poplar Fruit didn't bring a textbook or any supplementary notes, he still showed a high standard in class. He had seriously prepared for his classes. As long as the students studied seriously, they would be convinced by Poplar Fruit's knowledge. Even if they asked Poplar Fruit questions about other courses after class, Poplar Fruit would be able to quickly respond and give them sincere guidance. Right now, Poplar Fruit's influence was still spreading in a small circle. It would only explode after the episode where he participated in the Express book was broadcasted. However, this was all in the future. Of course, right now, Poplar Fruit was only a substitute teacher. Even if the outer courtyard teachers were busy with external affairs, they wouldn't ask Poplar Fruit to substitute for them every day. At most, he would only substitute for 10 classes 5 times a week. Most of the time, he didn't have any tasks. However, he wasn't idle. Accompanying Fong Beibei to teach the children of Xiong family village was one of Poplar Fruit's important tasks. After all, Fong Beibei was still young and inexperienced. Moreover, compared to her roommate Lin Xingshan, Fong Beibei lacked the talent to be a teacher. She had relied on her enthusiasm to get to the podium. However, she still needed Poplar Fruit's help to put out the fire. Due to the gradual expansion of the new dimension, there was no lack of teachers. Poplar Fruit was now gradually leaving the front line of teaching. However, this wasn't because he didn't care. Poplar Fruit wanted to take the lead and try to open up the path of interest teaching. What was interest teaching? In fact, it wasn't a new thing in the city. Especially in Yangcheng, there were all kinds of interest and specialty classes. Poplar Fruit knew that due to the limitations of equipment and geography, the children of the poor mountainous areas would never be able to become all-round talents like the children of the city. However, Poplar Fruit wanted to give them such an opportunity. Therefore, when Poplar Fruit had asked Fat Dragon to design the online homework system, he had also mentioned a grand plan to integrate interest teaching into their long-distance education system. Apart from studying step by step, the children also hoped to use the internet and the long-distance education system designed by Poplar Fruit to find content that they liked to study. During the usually boring nights waiting for sleep, they would also be able to learn some special skills. Currently, the system designed by Fat Dragon and his hacker buddies had already taken shape. Although it was still in the process of improving the experience, it was already used by over 600 children every day. Previously, Xiong Jiwu still had to scan the children's homework every day for the teachers to grade. Now, Xiong Jiwu didn't have to work so hard. The children could directly do their homework and submit their own answers through the system. However, the interest teaching that Poplar Fruit had mentioned was still a blank. It wasn't that they couldn't find anyone. Among the students who signed up to join the Multidimensional Teaching Society in Higashiyama University, there was no lack of talented people with unique skills. For example, there was a young calligrapher whose calligraphy could be sent to the exhibition hall, a Go expert who had won the gold medal in the National University Go competition, and there were more than 5 students on the list that Wang Yuba had given Poplar Fruit. However, how would interest teaching be taught? How would interest teaching be done? This required Poplar Fruit to explore as a pioneer before they could truly integrate the resources. At present, it seemed that the best method for interest teaching was for the teacher to make a video of the class and let the students learn by themselves. If they had any questions, they could leave a message and the teacher would answer them. After all, interest teaching was different from regular classes. There might only be one teacher, and they couldn't always accompany the students who wanted to learn. The students' learning time wasn't fixed either. After all, they were using their spare time. The children in the mountains still needed to do housework. Sometimes they would be busy at home and might not have time to go to school at night to study by themselves. Poplar Fruit would record a video lesson explaining in detail the fist technique that he had improved on Kiki's Benbin fist. It would use 6 cameras to shoot from multiple angles, supplemented by editing and dubbing, so that interested children could learn by themselves. Poplar Fruit had once wanted to name this lesson as Body Strengthening Fist. After all, his fist technique didn't have obvious lethality. Its main purpose was to let the children exercise more and achieve the goal of strengthening their bodies. However, Fong Beibei said that his name wasn't as beautiful as Kiki's. In the end, he didn't change it. It was still called Benbin Fist. This fist technique was developed by Poplar Fruit when he helped Chen Anlin and Song Jiwen research a new type of Tai Chi that matched the rhythm of square dancing. Before he started recording, the children in Xiong village had received the news, especially the group of naughty children led by Xiong Xiaofeng. They rubbed their hands together every day and jumped up and down to ask about Uncle Poplar Fruit's progress. However, Poplar Fruit didn't rush to start recording just because the children urged him. On the one hand, he needed time to organize the syllabus of the lesson. On the other hand, he had to run around and submit applications to establish a charity foundation dedicated to long-distance education services. The establishment of a charity foundation wasn't easy. Fortunately, Song Jiwen's father, Song Chunfong, helped him to build connections. Although Poplar Fruit ran around a lot and the process was very complicated, he didn't encounter any difficulties. Chapter 853. Beibei, where are you going? After class, Lin Xingshan chased after Fong Beibei and giggled as she hugged her arm and said, "Recently, except for class, we haven't played together. Now that you have a boyfriend, you don't want your best friend anymore?" Fong Beibei pinched Lin Xingshan's cheeks that had some baby fat and said with a bell-like smile, "How can that be? Obviously, after I moved out, you guys didn't invite me to any activities. I didn't say that I won't participate. Today, Uncle went out to do something, so I have to pick up Kiki after class. That's why I left so quickly," Fong Beibei said with a smile. She and Poplar Fruit often stick together at night, but they usually have their own lives. This seems to have become a tacit understanding between them. Even if they are a couple or even a couple in the future, they need their own space and circle of friends. Otherwise, they will gradually lose themselves and become each other's accessory. "Then I'll go with you to pick up Kiki. Today, us three sisters will go shopping. Okay?" Lin Xingshan suggested. "Okay." Fong Beibei happily nodded and said, "I haven't been to Shangzhou for a long time. I also want to buy Kiki some good-looking headbands. Boys shopping is generally more purposeful, while girls shopping, they enjoy the process." Don't look at how Fong Beibei talked about Kiki's headbands. She just casually said, when they really go shopping, their desire to buy will quickly be aroused. At that time, it is not something that can be covered by a few headbands. After picking up Kiki from Poplar Fruit's house, when she heard that they are going shopping, Kiki was so excited that she jumped and chirped like a lark, as if she wanted to bring the whole campus from autumn to spring. However, a loud braking sound broke this happy atmosphere. A Porsche sports car stopped in front of Fong Beibei. Fong Beibei quickly protected Kiki, frowning as she looked over. She saw a man that she really didn't want to see again coming out of the car. After Gan Juanji was chased away by Fong Beibei that day, he returned home full of anger. It was not just a matter of face. Fong Beibei's change in attitude towards him, it was a huge blow to Gan Juanji's confidence. First, he was very handsome. Even when he walked on campus, some girls would secretly look back at him. Secondly, he was very rich, dressed in branded clothes, the aura of a rich family's son, enough to make countless girls flock to him. Lastly, he had feelings. He had already said that he gave up his studies in America and came back to pursue only loves. His, SSSTSSS, shoulds. Why? S is not that she's is. She's that's that? Is it because she's pretty, she's become more scheming? Gan Juanji really couldn't figure it out. Later, he made a judgment that Fong Beibei was no longer the pure and innocent class belle in his heart. After so many years of change, she was no different from the girls that he pursued. Perhaps the money attack, the romantic attack, these tactics that he had used so many times would work on her too. When Gan Juanji came to this conclusion, he secretly scolded himself for being so stupid. He didn't use the simple and crude method that he was best at, but he wanted to play pure and innocent. He thought that Fong Beibei was blind and couldn't recognize his branded clothes. She should have driven his Porsche, which had driven countless girls in nightclubs, and even experienced countless cars. Yes, this car could be said to be a magic weapon that won't fail in picking up girls. Gan Juanji thought for a few days, and even used his connections to let his car directly drive into Higashiyama University's campus. Just as he drove in, he saw Fong Beibei on the opposite side of the campus, who had been making his heart itch for a long time. He hurriedly turned around and chased after her, not caring about the traffic jam, and stopped directly in front of Fong Beibei. Beibei! Gon Juanji got out of the car, leaned on the car door with a smile, and stood there looking at Fong Beibei. The passing boys on bicycles all took a detour. They looked back and angrily spat, "Another rich dog. Damn it, so what if you have a car? What a pity, you don't know that the fresh flower will be eaten by a dog again." Who is he? Lin Xingshan held Kiki's hand and hugged Fong Beibei's hand, frowning as she looked at this obviously rich second generation, and asked, "Don't worry about him." Fong Beibei was so angry that her chest was heaving up and down, and she pulled Lin Xingshan to leave in another direction. "Hey, Beibei, look at me." When Gon Juanji saw Fong Beibei turn around, he was so anxious that he didn't care about acting cool anymore. He took out a large bouquet of roses from the car. The packaging looked expensive, and rushed up to Fong Beibei to block them. "Beibei, I specially went to the flower shop to pick out these flowers, and I chose the most beautiful ones, and then I wrapped them up by hand. These are all my good intentions, and I'll give them to you." Gon Juanji handed the flowers to Fong Beibei and said with a smile, "Forgive me. Okay?" He said it as if it was true he was really shameless. What did he mean by picking them himself? These flowers were ordered by phone, and he drove to pick them up, and he didn't even stay in the flower shop for more than 2 minutes. When Lin Xingshan heard his last sentence, a thought flashed through her mind, and she seemed to have guessed something. Fong Beibei seemed to smell something disgusting, and she covered her nose, pulled Lin Xingshan, and turned to leave again. "Beibei, don't go." Gon Juanji didn't know why the bouquet of 99 special red roses, which cost him more than 1,000 yuan, didn't work. Unwilling to admit defeat, he once again blocked in front of Fong Beibei. "Don't bother me, okay?" "Do you know that I feel disgusted when I see you?" Fong Beibei finally couldn't take it anymore, and shouted loudly, "Get lost. Do you know how to write the word, disgusting?" "But, Beibei, have you forgotten? We have a past. In the past, I was wrong, but I've repented. In the future, I will love you wholeheartedly, and buy you the most expensive and beautiful clothes. Look at what brand you wear, you don't know how to pick it all." Gon Juanji pretended to be affectionate. He deliberately showed the diamond-studded watch on his left wrist, looked at it and said, "Come with me, okay? We're going to have a French meal at the top floor of Yangcheng Tower, and I'll tell you, I've been thinking of you everywhere I go these past few years." Gon Juanji's hypocritical appearance made Lin Xingshan want to vomit, and Fong Beibei tried to get rid of him several times, but he blocked in front of her. He was really like a sticky candy, and she couldn't get rid of him. "Surnamed Gon, let me tell you, everything about you in my eyes is a joke. A pile of shit. Disgusting. I wish I could never see you again. Do you know? Why are you so perverted? Do you have any self-awareness, any sense of shame?" Fong Beibei was so angry that she cursed out a curse that she had never used before. Kiki was pulled back and forth, and her head was almost dizzy. In a moment of carelessness, Kiki staggered and stepped on Gon Juanji's glossy leather shoes, and 2 small mud footprints were so obvious. Gon Juanji was originally stunned by Fong Beibei's scolding, and then a feeling of shame rose from his heart. He was the only successor of the Gon family, and wherever he went, people would flatter him when had he ever been called a pile of shit. At this time, Kiki stepped on his foot again, and it was like igniting a barrel of explosives. Gon Juanji's face darkened, and he scolded, "Which family's brat is this? Do you have any manners? Where are your eyes? I'll fucking kick you to death." Since they had already shed all pretense of cordiality, Gon Juanji couldn't care less about his image. He didn't really kick, but he actually picked up the bouquet of expensive roses and threw it at Kiki. Chapter 854. Papa. Poplar Fruit was handling the Foundation's public account at the bank counter. Suddenly, his heart twitched violently, as if there was a shout that broke through time and space and hit his mind. Poplar Fruit's pupils narrowed slightly, and a monstrous momentum rose. However, this momentum was just a flash, because in the blink of an eye, Yonggu didn't feel the panic she felt just now. Was it an illusion? Poplar Fruit was puzzled. The same feeling also appeared on the bank counter girl sitting in front of him. Although her head was lowered, she suddenly felt frightened, as if a man-eating monster had suddenly appeared in front of her. However, when she raised her head, this feeling disappeared again. In front of her was still the tall and handsome man, who was gentle and elegant. Looking at him, her heart would beat faster, but it was no longer because she was afraid. Although Poplar Fruit no longer felt panic, he was faintly uneasy, because he knew that his sixth sense had always been very accurate, and it had even saved him in many dangerous situations. Something must have happened to Kiki. There was not much left. Poplar Fruit waited for 10 minutes. When the girl at the counter finished the matter for him, he quickly packed up the documents and left. As soon as he got back to the car, Poplar Fruit anxiously picked up his mobile phone and called his wife. But his wife told him that Fong Beibei had already taken Kiki back. Poplar Fruit called Fong Beibei, but Fong Beibei's mobile phone could not be reached. What was going on? Fong Beibei was the same as him. They had the habit of not turning off their mobile phones. Even in the middle of the night, their mobile phones were turned on. How could it not be reached? She was not in class now, so it should be possible that it could not be reached. In a hurry, Poplar Fruit stepped on the accelerator, and the Land Rover roared and went through the long traffic flow. The speed of the car was not slow, and he frequently changed lanes. Fortunately, his reaction speed was super fast, and he was also agile. The car swayed like a flexible fish, and always maintained a very high speed. On the way, Poplar Fruit kept calling Fong Beibei, but it did not get through. He became more and more anxious, and his heart was filled with worry for his girlfriend and daughter. He wasn't rushing aimlessly. He had a vague feeling that Chi-Chi should be in the direction of his home. Poplar Fruit estimated that he would get a lot of tickets on the way, but he still hurried back to the teacher's apartment. He ran upstairs quickly. When he opened the door, he heard Kiki's crying, and the atmosphere in the room seemed to be very depressed. Hearing the sound of the door, Lin Xingshan, who was holding Fong Beibei, turned her head in surprise. Kiki slipped down from the sofa, ran quickly to her father, and threw herself into her father's arms with a crying voice. Kiki was fine, but her face was full of tears, and her big eyes were still filled with tears. In her father's broad arms, she seemed to feel safe and complained, "There's a bad uncle, he hit Kiki, he hit Sister Beibei. Woo-woo. Papa hit him. Hit him." Poplar Fruit wiped the tears on Kiki's face, but did not answer. Instead, he quickly walked to Fong Beibei, who was anxiously trying to pull up her shirt with the help of Lin Xingshan. "Don't move," Poplar Fruit said in a deep voice. His voice was very calm, but behind the calmness, who knew how many stormy waves of emotions were hidden, he held Lin Xingshan. "Let me see." Fong Beibei's shirt was half covered, and her back was facing Poplar Fruit, revealing the pink elastic belt. Her skin was as white as snow, and the spring scenery was exposed. This was the first time Poplar Fruit saw Fong Beibei's body, but Poplar Fruit did not have any evil thoughts. His right hand trembled, and gently slid past the bloody scratches on Fong Beibei's right shoulder. Her fair and tender skin was even covered with fine grains of sand because of her trembling. Her soft and fragrant shoulders, her beautiful shoulder blades, and her snow-white neck covered by her long hair. It should have been a beautiful scene, but it was all ruined by the bloodstains. "Does it hurt?" Yonggu's voice was no longer calm, nor was it stiff. His voice trembled as he asked with the tenderness he felt for his girlfriend. "Yes." Fong Beibei bit her lower lip, and tears began to roll in her eyes. Just now, she had been strong and did not make a sound. She could not help but feel wronged when her boyfriend asked her, "Boo-hoo! Boo-hoo!" Kiki's crying had gradually stopped, but under the influence of Fong Beibei, she cried again. "That bad uncle bullied Kiki. He hit me." Kiki did not elaborate, and Lin Xingshan could not help but ask, That person is Shanshan? Fong Beibei suddenly interrupted her. She looked at Lin Xingshan firmly and said, "Let me say it." However, when she looked at Poplar Fruit, she was somewhat evasive, as if she felt guilty. Poplar Fruit frowned slightly, and a trace of doubt was added to the volcano that was erupting in his heart. He was really angry. When he saw his girlfriend's scarred appearance, he was about to go berserk. "Shanshan, you go back first," Poplar Fruit persuaded. "I'll be fine here." Hearing Poplar Fruit's words, Fong Beibei's body trembled. Lin Xingshan looked at Fong Beibei and saw her nod in agreement. She hesitated for a moment and said, "Well, I'll go back first. I'll come to see you in the evening." After Lin Xingshan left, Poplar Fruit, who had sent her out, came back. Fong Beibei raised her head and grabbed the front of her clothes. Her hair was messy, and her eyes were red. She looked at Poplar Fruit in fear and said with a crying voice, "Uncle, I'm sorry. There's something I hid from you." With that, she could no longer hold back her tears. Bean-sized teardrops rolled down her cheeks, causing Kiki to cry loudly. Poplar Fruit's heart clenched. He still didn't know what happened, but he could vaguely guess. He strode towards Fong Beibei and held her face in his hands. His thumb gently wiped away her tears, and said in a low voice, "Don't worry. Let me take a look at your wound." Poplar Fruit sat down beside Fong Beibei and comforted Kiki. Then he picked up the small tweezers left by Lin Xingshan. Fong Beibei choked with sobs. Under Poplar Fruit's gentle pressure, she turned her shoulder so that her injured shoulder was facing away from Poplar Fruit. She muttered, I'm sorry. Poplar Fruit temporarily calmed down. He put his arm around Fong Beibei's lower abdomen and pulled her closer to him. He said softly in her ear, "If there's anything, let's talk about it later. Okay?" Fong Beibei nodded, and her shoulders gradually stopped trembling. Poplar Fruit looked at the wound on Fong Beibei's shoulder, and his heart ached. There were also some broken thorns hidden in the bloodstains. It was obvious how much pain Fong Beibei was enduring. Baby. The wound on Fong Beibei's body was also hurting in Poplar Fruit's heart. The anger in Poplar Fruit's heart burned fiercely again. There was even a bloody light in his eyes. The last time something like this happened was when he shot the assassin who approached Chi-Chi in the head. Chapter 855. When she found out, Fong Beibei had already been in high school for a semester. From Gon Juanji's junior high school classmate, Fong Beibei saw Gon Juanji's space. It was full of photos of nightclubs and beautiful women. It was the best way to describe Gon Juanji's life. It could be seen that Gon Juanji was a different person from the one Fong Beibei knew. Was it because of the environment after he went back? Fong Beibei had no way to know. She didn't give up and skipped class in the afternoon. She ran to the gate of the aristocratic school where Gon Juanji was and hid in a corner. She waited until the sun went down, but she still couldn't see the familiar figure. Fong Beibei left as night fell and the north wind was cold. However, when she walked on the street in a trance, she saw Gon Juanji from afar. He was holding a sexy woman in a revealing dress and nibbling on the street lamp. A luxury car was parked next to them. It was the Porsche that he showed off in the space. Gon Juanji's hand touched the bottom of the woman's skirt, and he still leaned on the woman's chest like a pig. Fong Beibei felt that her world suddenly collapsed. She didn't know how to go back to her school. She hid in the dormitory. She didn't cry, but just sat under the mosquito net for the whole night. The next day, Fong Beibei went back to class as if nothing had happened. Even if the teacher questioned her, she made up a lie to answer. Although everything was normal, it didn't take long for her to return to the second year of junior high school, to return to the simple and smiling girl. This was all because she no longer thought of him, and no longer felt reluctant to part with the past. The first love that had occupied her heart for nearly 3 years had already been erased. Although it was said to be erased, in reality, she had still used 3 years to completely bury the past before she could begin to welcome a new love. In the 3 years when her heart was empty, Fong Beibei studied hard. With her talent, she became a top student again. Her English was not good, but her math was always good. She also fell in love with small animals that were just as pure. By chance, she approached a stray dog rescue station, which led to her unremitting volunteer work. In high school, those who knew Fong Beibei didn't know that Fong Beibei had such a past. After going to university, Fong Beibei turned over a new leaf. In one of the dormitory's night parties, she was able to casually tell a few of her best friends. Although she didn't say much, it was enough to prove that that person was no longer important. Poplar Fruit, on the other hand, vaguely understood from Lin Xingshan's unintentional words, but he did not take it to heart, because who didn't have a past? However, Fong Beibei did not expect that he would appear again. The first time he returned with his halberd broken, he actually appeared again after a few days. The second time he appeared, he drove a Porsche. It was still a different car from the previous one, but it still made Fong Beibei feel disgusted and disgusted. I didn't expect that he would become so bad. Kiki stepped on his shoe, and he actually hit Kiki with flowers, Fong Beibei murmured. She still felt a little scared when she thought of the scene at that time. So, you helped Kiki block it? She didn't ask this question. Poplar Fruit's hand gently brushed Fong Beibei's injured shoulder, and his eyes flashed with a fierce light. It was as if the violent man was standing in front of her. Although his voice was still very gentle, the aura that burst out from his eyes was like that of a ferocious beast, eager to devour a person. Fong Beibei did not feel this, because when Poplar Fruit looked at her, he had already put away everything just now, and replaced it with tenderness and love for his girlfriend. I know I'm wrong. Although Fong Beibei felt Poplar Fruit's feelings, Poplar Fruit only listened quietly and did not make any response. Fong Beibei was not confident. She pulled Poplar Fruit's hand and said pitifully. Poplar Fruit gently lifted her bangs, looked at her bright eyes, and asked slowly, "Do you know where you're wrong?" When Poplar Fruit said this, Fong Beibei thought that Poplar Fruit was angry, and she said with a sobbing tone, "I know I shouldn't be in a relationship at such a young age, I shouldn't. But I didn't do anything with him. We just held hands. Uncle, you have to believe me." Towards the end, she was so anxious that she was about to cry. "Stupid. Idiot." Poplar Fruit gently knocked Fong Beibei's head and reprimanded, "Do you think I'm such a pedantic person? Why would I be angry with you because of your past? But don't you guys have that kind of plot?" Fong Beibei hugged her head, pouted and muttered, "Did you hear it from Wu Yani?" Poplar Fruit rolled his eyes. He knew that when Fong Beibei was a freshman, she heard Wu Yani talk a lot about the principles of gender, so he was sure without asking, "Am I that kind of person?" Poplar Fruit hugged Fong Beibei with both hands, looked into her eyes, and said seriously, "Baby, although you called me weird uncle at the beginning, I can tell you clearly that I'm completely different from the kind of man Wu Yani talked about, who doesn't have a past." Poplar Fruit said, "Didn't I have a girlfriend before? And I was with her for 4 years. Then I had sex with Kiki's mother and gave birth to Kiki. I've told you all these before. The past only represents the past. I love you because of the current you." Poplar Fruit continued, "Of course I'm a little unhappy about your past. But the reason why I'm unhappy is because of myself. I hate myself for not meeting you earlier and protecting you earlier, otherwise other people would come and hurt you." Fong Beibei's eyes were filled with tears. Those were tears of being moved. "Your fault isn't in the past, but you didn't tell me earlier." Poplar Fruit wiped the tears from his girlfriend's eyes and gently said, "I'm very unhappy about this. I didn't know that he would come back." Fong Beibei argued. Her voice gradually became softer. Poplar Fruit just looked at her. Fong Beibei lowered her head and whispered, "I'm sorry. I should have told you. Baby, I know you were worried before, but you must remember, no matter what other people say, you must first believe in me." Poplar Fruit held Fong Beibei's hands and softly said, "No matter what, I'll be your strongest support. If anything happens, You must tell me. I can't bear to let you bear it alone. Fong Beibei nodded vigorously. She affectionately looked at Poplar Fruit, pouted her mouth and said, "Uncle, I love you. I love you too." Poplar Fruit's lips curled up and lowered his head to kiss Fong Beibei's rosy lips, patting Fong Beibei's, but Poplar Fruit pointed to the door and smiled. "Okay, it's time to go out. Let me tell you, Kiki and Goldie must be at the door eavesdropping. Do you believe me?" His smile was brilliant, as if Poplar Fruit had already let go of the initiator of this matter. Chapter 856. Poplar Fruit comforted Fong Beibei and Kiki and asked them to take an afternoon nap. Kiki had her lunch, but Fong Beibei did not eat. She was exhausted from crying and was mentally and physically exhausted. Chi-Chi, on the other hand, was fine. Although she was crying, she wasn't really affected by it. On one hand, Fong Beibei had helped to block the damage. On the other hand, compared to the disasters she had experienced before, this was just a small matter. However, Fong Beibei was affected. She was too insecure. She was entangled with Poplar Fruit and hugged Poplar Fruit tightly. Poplar Fruit sat on the bed and stayed with her until she fell asleep. Walking out of the bedroom, he quietly closed the door. Yonggu turned around, his eyes flashing with a sharp light. At this moment, his body was overflowing with a murderous aura. Although he still had the appearance of a scholar, refined and cultured, those who had truly touched blood would not be unfamiliar with him. Poplar Fruit had the intention to kill. Poplar Fruit was a scholar, but in reality he was also a martial artist. People who practiced martial arts were willing to go against the heavens for their love. Looking at his previous achievements. The first time he fought, he killed a robber at the bank with his fists. The second time he fought to save Kiki, he took a risk and blew off the killer's head with a bullet. The third time he fought, Kiki was kidnapped, and Poplar Fruit chased after the motorcycle. If Song Jiwen had not stopped him, a few more lives would have been lost. "You shouldn't have hurt my woman. You shouldn't have bullied my Kiki." Poplar Fruit clenched his teeth and clenched his fists. The blood in his body was boiling, and his eyes were frightening. In the past, it was Kiki. Now it was Fong Beibei. The two girls that he loved the most in his life were his reverse scale. It would be fine if he did not touch them. But once he did, he would make Poplar Fruit go crazy. Now that his kung fu was getting better, Poplar Fruit began to have a certain estimate and confidence in his own strength. He seemed to have surpassed most of the humans, including the special forces of Yangcheng. Even the best soldiers there were not a match for him. To deal with a person, Poplar Fruit could think of many ways to kill the other party. It was even possible to do it without anyone noticing. Using his internal energy as an example, his internal energy could save people, but it could also hurt people. He could condense his inner strength and transform it to invade the opponent's internal organs, blocking their meridians and creating the illusion of death due to myocardial infarction. Poplar Fruit was confident that it would be undetectable even with the current equipment. It could be said that if Poplar Fruit were to become an assassin, he would definitely have a better future than staying in school as a scholar or a teacher. Luckily, Poplar Fruit was not a bloodthirsty person. He would only take action for the people that he loved. Now, even if Poplar Fruit was furious, he had not lost his rationality. Right now, Poplar Fruit knew nothing about Ganjuanji. He needed to know himself and his enemy before he could give the other party a fatal blow. Taking out his phone, Poplar Fruit dialed Song Jiwen's number. He hesitated for a moment but did not dial it in the end. "I shouldn't have let Mosquito get involved in this matter." Poplar Fruit shook his head lightly and changed to Fat Dragon's number. "Boss Fruit, why are you so free today to look for me?" Fat Dragon cheekily said. Poplar Fruit could hear his wife beside him urging him to eat lunch. "Let's find a quiet place. I have something to ask of you," Poplar Fruit said in a deep voice. Fat Dragon was stunned for a moment. He rarely heard Poplar Fruit speak in such a tone. He muttered, "Not good, Poplar Fruit's mood is not right. Should I inform old Xiong?" Xiong Kahu had trained him in every possible way on the mountain. As a result, Fat Dragon had lost a lot of weight after leaving the mountain. Although Fat Dragon was in so much pain that he wished he was dead, his body had indeed improved a lot. Fat Dragon still respected and appreciated the old man. "Forget it." Fat Dragon shook his head and said to Poplar Fruit on the phone, "Wait a moment, I'll call you back." After a while, Fat Dragon changed to an encrypted phone number and called back. "Help me check on a person. His name is Gon Juanji. I think he's the heir of Gon's paper industry." Poplar Fruit had checked on his phone before. "I need his address and his recent activities." Fat Dragon was silent for a moment. He thought of the old man on the mountain who had boasted that he had killed many South Vietnamese soldiers. Once again, the old man had unintentionally revealed that Poplar Fruit's kung fu was very powerful in order to encourage him. "Fruit, it's not difficult to give you this information. But I want to ask you, how did he provoke you?" Fat Dragon asked hesitantly. "He hurt baby," Poplar Fruit said coldly. "Baby? Kiki?" "No, my girlfriend," Poplar Fruit said. Fat Dragon was even more confused now. He stammered and didn't know what to say. Scared, Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Where did the hacker who wasn't afraid of anything go?" "I'm just worried about you." "What's there to be afraid of?" Fat Dragon was provoked by Poplar Fruit and said angrily, "It's easy for me to get this information for you. You don't have to worry about me. I know what I'm doing." Poplar Fruit said indifferently, "You find his trace. I can handle the rest." Fat Dragon felt a little scared. He was frightened by Poplar Fruit's current state. Poplar Fruit had never spoken to him like this before. Even when he asked him to find Han Tao's and Liang Huaxing's father's information, Fat Dragon didn't feel that Poplar Fruit's tone was so cold. "He hit my woman and almost hurt Kiki," Poplar Fruit said concisely. He didn't want to say more. "Okay, I'll check it out. I'll let you know if there's any news." Fat Dragon gritted his teeth. He could understand Poplar Fruit's anger. He was originally a hacker with a chivalrous heart. Now that he was provoked by Poplar Fruit again, he decided to play along with Poplar Fruit. After putting down the phone, Poplar Fruit cooked a pot of porridge. He ate most of it himself and left 2 bowls of porridge in the pot for Fong Bebe. Poplar Fruit did nothing but sit cross-legged on the sofa to cultivate his internal strength. Although his internal strength could be cultivated automatically, it was very slow because of the excessive consumption. He needed to recover as soon as possible so that he could treat Fong Bebe as soon as possible. At that time, Gon Juanji was in a violent mood and threw the rose in his hand at Kiki. He was dizzy. When he came back to his senses, he saw Fong Bebe's shoulder covered in blood standing in front of Kiki. Lin Xingshan angrily pointed at him and scolded him. Gon Juanji didn't hear clearly what she said. He was very flustered. He didn't expect this to happen. Not only Lin Xingshan, but the surrounding students also saw his violence. They looked at him with unfriendly eyes and were ready to surround him. University students were at the age where they were hot-blooded and impatient. What couldn't they do? If they really attacked in anger, a rich second-generation heir like him would easily become the target of a group of people. He wasn't afraid of the police or a lawsuit. He was afraid of being beaten up for no reason. Gon Juanji ran back to his car in a panic and quickly left the scene. He felt that he didn't have the face to appear in front of Fong Bebe again. He might as well continue his life of debauchery and stop worrying about this woman who had become so difficult to get. Anyway, he hit her. Her family didn't have money or power. What could they do to him? Gon Juanji didn't know that he had provoked an enraged god of death. Chapter 857. Fong Bebe seemed to have become a lot bolder after experiencing the entanglement during the day. At night, she was not as tightly dressed as she usually was. After taking a shower, she only wore a camisole and swayed in front of Poplar Fruit. It was still warmer in the house. Otherwise, he would catch a cold. Poplar Fruit was a little overwhelmed by the vacuum, especially when she hugged Poplar Fruit's arm. Her cold and smooth skin was pressed against his warm arm. It was so comfortable that Poplar Fruit wanted to cry out. Poplar Fruit stretched out his right hand and rubbed Fong Beibei's bangs. He said helplessly, "What's wrong? Are you seducing me again? Aren't you afraid that I'll eat you up?" Fong Beibei's eyes were like the bright river of stars that Poplar Fruit saw in his hometown. She smiled and hugged Poplar Fruit's arm in her arms. She said slyly, "I gave you a chance, but you didn't want it. Now it's gone. You can't eat it, you can't eat it." Through the thin camisole, Poplar Fruit felt amazing softness and comfortable elasticity. Poplar Fruit was helpless. He pinched her face and pulled his hand away. He sighed and said, "I'm not playing with you anymore. I can only look but not eat it. I'm so happy." Hee hee. Fong Beibei lay down on the sofa and happily watched Poplar Fruit walk to Kiki. She watched him play a drawing game with Kiki. But after a while, Poplar Fruit was driven away by the angry Kiki waving her crayon. The little girl pouted and stomped her feet. "Oh, Papa is bad." Poplar Fruit's drawing skills were ordinary, but he liked to teach others. Moreover, he always wanted to add some inexplicable lines and patterns on Kiki's original drawings, which annoyed Kiki. Fong Beibei watched from the side, grinning from ear to ear. "You don't have to do homework today." Poplar Fruit glared at her and said, "Hurry up and study. Why are you so free? I hurt you." Fong Beibei covered her right shoulder, looked at Poplar Fruit pitifully and said, "I'm not going to study today, so be it." Poplar Fruit didn't want to urge her at all. He was just putting on airs just now. The phone rang. Poplar Fruit's pupils shrank slightly. How could it be so fast? He walked towards the desk where his phone was placed. Fong Beibei poked her head over and asked, "Who's calling you so late?" Poplar Fruit didn't hide it and said, "It might be Fat Dragon." "Let me see." Fong Beibei knew that Fat Dragon was helping Poplar Fruit with the remote teaching system, so she didn't think much of it. Picking up the phone, Poplar Fruit was surprised to see that it wasn't Fat Dragon calling. But, "Teacher He? How could a busy man like him have time to call him?" Poplar Fruit looked at the phone strangely and said to Fong Beibei, "It's Teacher He." Fong Beibei quickly got up and ran to Poplar Fruit's side. She urged excitedly, "Hurry up and answer it. What are you hesitating for?" All right. Poplar Fruit planned to take it to a quiet place on the balcony to answer it. Seeing his girlfriend so excited, he took it to the sofa and answered the phone. "Hello, Teacher He?" Poplar Fruit immediately felt Fong Beibei kneeling on the sofa. She pressed on his shoulder and put her ear close to him. Poplar Fruit. Yes, it's me." Teacher He chuckled on the other side. "It's really Teacher He." Fong Beibei was excited. She grabbed Poplar Fruit's shoulder and shook it as she babbled. "It's really Teacher He." Teacher He's ears were very sensitive. He smiled and asked, Is there someone else beside Poplar Fruit? Is it Kiki?" Poplar Fruit stared at Fong Beibei, who was causing trouble, and said, "No, it's my girlfriend. She's your fan. She was so excited when she saw you call. Don't mind her." Oh. Teacher He laughed. "Why would I mind? What's her name?" Poplar Fruit held the phone close to Fong Beibei. She said nervously into the phone, "Hello, Teacher He. My name is Fong Beibei. I'm Poplar Fruit's girlfriend." "Beibei, hello." Teacher He laughed. "I'm Poplar Fruit's friend. You don't have to be so formal." Yes. Fong Beibei said that, but she was still nervous in front of her idol. Fortunately, her phone also rang. Fong Beibei returned Poplar Fruit's phone to Poplar Fruit. She jumped off the sofa and ran to the bedroom to answer the phone. After chatting with Teacher He for a while, Poplar Fruit found out why he was looking for him. The show that Poplar Fruit recorded last month was going to be broadcast tomorrow night. Half a month passed in the blink of an eye, but the recording felt like it was just last night. Teacher He told Poplar Fruit that they would be promoting the show. Poplar Fruit didn't have a management company and wasn't considered an authentic person in the entertainment industry, so he didn't need to work hard to promote the show. However, he still hoped that Poplar Fruit would repost their Weibo. At least, it would show his existence. It wasn't a big deal, so Poplar Fruit agreed with a smile. After hanging up the phone, Poplar Fruit logged into Weibo. He hadn't been on Weibo for a long time because of a lot of things. As soon as he logged in, there were a lot of notifications. I gained more than 1 million new followers, more than 200,000 new replies, and more than 500,000 people directly or indirectly at me. Yang Guo looked at his Weibo with a dumbfounded expression. He actually gained so many followers, almost doubling the number of followers. What's going on? He didn't have the habit of scrolling through the replies one by one. He only checked to block messages from non-friends, and he saw Mr. He and the others reposting his Weibo. There were also some photos from the recording studio. It seemed that because of these reasons, many fans of the fast novel liked him. No matter what, Poplar Fruit smiled and found the official Weibo that teacher he mentioned. He reposted it and introduced it, thanks to Mango TV's invitation. I took my daughter to watch the show that I've always liked. I also met teacher He, Sister Na. He also tagged the hosts and guests. We had a lot of fun, and I hope everyone likes it. Alright, let me reveal that Kiki will also be on stage. Remember to lock onto Mango TV at 8 p.m. tomorrow night. He knew that not only did he call himself Chi-Chi's father on Weibo, but most of the fans under his Weibo were also Chi-Chi's fans. Pulling Chi-Chi out to promote would definitely be more effective than him doing it alone. What did teacher He say? Fong Beibei asked excitedly after she finished the phone call. The show will be broadcasted tomorrow night. He asked me to repost his Weibo. Poplar Fruit shook his phone and smiled. Oh, I almost forgot. Fong Beibei patted her white and tender thighs and said in annoyance, Thank goodness teacher he reminded me. Tomorrow we'll all eat breakfast and wait to watch TV. Kiki. Kiki. Fong Beibei waved at Kiki happily and said, Sister will see you on TV tomorrow. Kiki held a crayon in each hand and looked up at Beibei's sister with an adorable expression. She didn't understand what she was talking about. Chapter 858. By the way, Uncle, Shanshan called me just now. Fong Beibei turned her head and said to Poplar Fruit, She, Lei, and Hua Hua are coming to see me later. Okay. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, By the way, when did Hua become Hua Hua? Fong Beibei laughed so hard that she bent over and said, There's a story behind this. Didn't we call Shanshan Xing Zi before? Poplar Fruit thought for a while and nodded. Lei was the first one in our dorm. She already had a boyfriend, a childhood sweetheart. Fong Beibei said. She didn't feel sad because she thought of herself when she talked about her childhood sweetheart. When she was with Poplar Fruit, the past was really like a fleeting cloud. I know. Poplar Fruit smiled and nodded, saying, You told me before. Then it was me. Fong Beibei smiled and pointed at herself. She seemed to be a little proud and said, I'm with you too. Then it's Wu Yani? Poplar Fruit guessed. He smiled and asked, What do you call her? Nini. Fong Beibei smiled and said, She also moved out. What about Shanshan? Poplar Fruit raised his eyebrows and smiled. I remember that she changed her nickname a long time ago, but she hasn't fallen in love yet. Your assumption is not valid. He didn't expect that my daughter, who studied the truth of mathematics, also liked to talk about these irrelevant topics. Fong Beibei patted Poplar Fruit's arm and said unhappily, How do you know that Shanshan hasn't fallen in love? Only a blockhead like you didn't realize. Okay? You don't even care about the situation of the members of your club. Let me tell you, it's not done yet, but looking at Shanshan's expression, I think she's about to accept it. Poplar Fruit opened his mouth and asked in confusion, Who is it? Senior Marshal Brother Wang Yuba. Fong Beibei's reply made Poplar Fruit a little dizzy. Wang Yuba is chasing after Lin Xingshan? Why hadn't he noticed it before? However, Poplar Fruit thought about it carefully, and it seemed to be true. Although Wang Yuba was very active before, he seemed to be even more active when Lin Xingshan appeared. Moreover, they often wandered around the classroom where Lin Xingshan was teaching. Poplar Fruit told Fong Bebe about his previous observations and smiled. So that's what happened. I was wondering why this kid would pretend to be serious sometimes. But if Shanshan is with him, it wouldn't be bad. Wang Yuba might seem irrelevant usually, but in reality, he's quite a reliable person. Fong Bebe nodded and smiled. Yeah. Hua Hua said that she'll be the only single person in our dorm soon. So she needs to change her nickname and change her luck, so that she can get married soon. Hua Hua. Poplar Fruit was used to this nickname and smiled. She looks quite good. So there should be a lot of hope. Do you want me to introduce a few guys to her? No need. You don't have good taste in men. Fong Bebe waved her hand and said disdainfully, but you have a task now, which is to pick them up at the school gate. At night, it's all girls, so it's not safe. That's definitely not a problem. Poplar Fruit packed up and went out to pick them up. Goldie also followed him. It didn't have a chance to go out today, so it had been cooped up in the house for a long time. When Fong Bebe's roommates came back, it was already past 8 o'clock. Among Fong Bebe's roommates, except for Wu Yani, who lived outside and gradually became estranged, all of them rushed over. When they heard Lin Xingshan say that Fong Bebe was injured, they were very anxious and wanted to come over to take a look. The house is a little small. Don't mind, Poplar Fruit said with a smile. He opened the door with the key, and Fong Bebe had already jumped down from the sofa happily. Kiki curiously hugged Fong Bebe's calf and watched from behind. Sister. Kiki's eyes lit up, and she called out in a clear voice. There was no need to mention how happy the little fellow was to have a familiar visitor. Poplar Fruit was busy finding slippers for them. Fong Bebe wanted to help, but she was stopped by several roommates. Bebe, you are seriously injured. How can you do these things? Don't move around. Let us see, how is your injury? The girls all surrounded Fong Bebe and pulled her to sit on the sofa. Lin Xingshan was at the outermost circle. She held Kiki and also looked over. Poplar Fruit became a peripheral figure. He shook his head, took out a few disposable cups, went to the kitchen to wash them, and poured water for them. Ouch! It hurts. Bebe, are you in pain? The girls' cries of alarm rose and fell one after another. They must have seen the scars on Fong Bebe's right shoulder, which hadn't completely scabbed over yet, so they still looked as red as blood. No wonder they were so scared and heartbroken. No, it doesn't hurt anymore. Fong Bebe smiled and comforted them. Uncle helped me deal with it. It will be fine in a few days. Lu Ruhua was the most emotional. She took Fong Bebe's hand and said with red eyes, "Who hit you so hard? Look at this wound. What if it leaves a scar?" It's okay. Fong Bebe had to comfort her. She was also a little scared. She reluctantly smiled and said, "Uncle said it won't leave a scar. And, even if there is a scar, Uncle will not dislike me. Right?" The girls all looked at Poplar Fruit, who was carrying water and putting the cup on the tea table. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Of course. Don't worry, it won't leave a scar. Trust me," Poplar Fruit said firmly while pouring water. His voice was not loud, but it gave the girls a lot of confidence. "If you ask me, the person who hit Bebe is a bastard. Compared to our brother Yang, he is far worse," Lin Xingshan said angrily. "It's a big bad guy." Kiki nodded vigorously and said, "Pleasant Goat will defeat him." She could finally continue the conversation with the adults. Thinking about that big bad guy during the day, Kiki was disgusted. "I think he's a scumbag. This kind of person should be struck by lightning." Lu Lei's temper was a little irritable. She angrily scolded. Fong Bebe quickly pulled her and said, "There are children here. Don't say such unpleasant things." Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said with a smile, "How about this, you sisters chat? I'll take Kiki to take a bath." "No, I want to play with my sisters." Chi-Chi pouted and shook her twin ponytails as she refused to comply. "If you don't take a bath, your body stinks. The sisters don't want to play with you." Poplar Fruit said with a smile, "Who would like a stinky Kiki?" "Woo, Kiki is not stinky. Kiki pouted but still obediently came down from Lin Xingshan's arms and went to take a bath with her father. Chapter 859. Fong Bei's roommates chatted with Fong Bei for almost an hour. They left reluctantly because Kiki was about to go to bed. When Poplar Fruit sent them back to school, they kept looking at Poplar Fruit with a weird expression. This made Poplar Fruit a little confused, but he didn't care. Poplar Fruit didn't know that after he went back, the three girls started gossiping. Hey, Lei, Shanshan, did you guys notice that Bei didn't wear anything inside? Lu Ruhua said excitedly. The vest is so thin. If you pull it down a little, you can see everything. Maybe it's because of the injury on her shoulder, so she wore something simple. Otherwise, it would be very painful to pull on the wound. Lin Xingshan said with a smile. How could it be? Lu Ruhua said disdainfully. There's definitely something going on inside. You didn't see it. When Bei hugged Kiki, Brother Yang helped her pull the corner of her clothes. It was so casual, as if we were holding hands. Bei is so conservative. It's not like we haven't seen it when we were freshmen. She didn't even want to wear underwear in the dorm. Lu Lei said with a smile, actually, it's very normal. The two of them are living together, what can't they do? Lu Ruhua seemed to have found a like-minded friend. She happily pulled Lu Lei's hand and said, Yes, I think Bei must have done it before. Aya, what you said is so unpleasant. What do you mean by before? Lu Lei said with a smile. The two of them started to play around. No way, I don't think Bei would have done it so early. Lin Xingshan, who was on the side, weakly defended her best friend. What don't you know? Lu Ruhua smiled and said, Let me tell you, Bei is very conservative. But her attitude towards Brother Yang is different. Didn't you see the look in her eyes? It was so sweet that it almost melted. Lu Lei nodded and said in agreement, actually, it's nothing. The two of them are very close, so it's normal for them to progress quickly. Lin Xingshan was dumbfounded and found it hard to accept. That's not fast enough. Let me tell you, Nini was no longer a virgin when she came back from the winter vacation at the beginning of this year. Lu Ruhua said mysteriously. After she broke up with her boyfriend, she told me that she regretted giving herself up too quickly. However, she was like this. Didn't she run out and live with someone else this time? I think Nini will probably come back. That man is not a good person either. Fortunately, Big Brother Yang is a good person, Lin Xingshan said with some fear. Lu Ruhua nodded and said, Bei's luck is good. She found a good man who is famous, talented, and rich. Although he has a daughter, he is really good to Bei. Lu Lei smiled and said, Okay, don't be envious of others. You should hurry up and find a boyfriend. You look thirsty all day long. The few girls talked and laughed all the way back to the dormitory. On Poplar Fruit's side, he returned home a little late because he received another phone call on the way. Fat Dragon. He gave Gon Juanji's address and helped Poplar Fruit remotely install a GPS positioning system in his mobile phone. Poplar Fruit could use this positioning system to locate Gon Juanji's location, as long as he was holding the mobile phone. This time, Fat Dragon's actions were much faster than before. It was mainly because Gon Juanji's background was more prominent. Gon's paper was a well-known leading company in Guangdong province in the 1990s. Although it felt like the sun was setting, it still had a market value of more than 1 billion yuan. Gon Juanji was a very flamboyant person, but his brain wasn't as smart as he appeared to be. Fat Dragon easily found his information from a dating website. Then, he cracked his various social accounts. This guy used the same password, and cracked his mobile phone and other personal communication devices. Things went so smoothly that even Fat Dragon couldn't believe it. In the middle of the night, Poplar Fruit suddenly opened his eyes. He had slept for 3 hours, and at this time it was only a little over 1 o'clock in the morning. Usually, Poplar Fruit would go to the living room to write and translate, but today was different. Poplar Fruit's eyes flashed with a cold light. It's time to avenge the baby. When Fong Bei slept, not only was she in his arms, but she also hugged his hand very tightly. Poplar Fruit carefully pulled his arm out of her chest. Of course, he also touched the two soft lumps of flesh, which made Poplar Fruit's heart tremble slightly. Now wasn't the time to think about this. Poplar Fruit came out of the bedroom quietly. Before he came out, he pulled out a small luggage bag from the bottom of the closet. When he came to the living room, Poplar Fruit opened the luggage bag and revealed the tights inside. In fact, this was a set of matte Batman clothes. After removing the fancy cape and eye straps, it was a qualified night suit. Poplar Fruit bought it in the United States because of his love for Batman. He didn't expect it to come in handy now. After he took off his underwear, Poplar Fruit began to put on the night suit. This suit was a bit like a dress, and it was quite troublesome to wear. Creak! Hearing a soft sound, Poplar Fruit's heart jumped. He looked up and saw Fong Beibei coming out of the bedroom, rubbing her eyes. "Uncle, don't work today. Sleep with me. Okay?" Fong Beibei still felt a little insecure that day. After Poplar Fruit left, she had a nightmare and woke up in shock. Then, she ran to the living room to look for Poplar Fruit. "Uncle, what are you doing?" Fong Beibei looked at Poplar Fruit, dumbfounded. She saw that he was wearing a black tights, and that he was pulling the zipper up from his chest to his neck. "Ahem," Poplar Fruit said awkwardly. "I just went out for a walk. Then why are you dressed like this?" Fong Beibei was no longer sleepy, and asked, "And, in the middle of the night, why are you going for a walk?" "Just going for a walk." Poplar Fruit was not good at talking, so he dryly repeated. Fong Beibei looked at Poplar Fruit for a while, and then walked up to Poplar Fruit's hand, tightly not letting go. There was no smile in her eyes, but it was replaced with fear and uneasiness. She trembled and said, "Is it because of him?" Poplar Fruit was silent for a while before he nodded. "I don't want you to go." Fong Beibei knew that Poplar Fruit was good at fighting. She tightly hugged Poplar Fruit's waist, and tears flowed down. "No, I'm not afraid that you'll do anything to him, but I'm afraid that something will happen to you." Fong Beibei was worried that Poplar Fruit would misunderstand. She wiped her tears and looked up at him. Poplar Fruit smiled, gently patted her head, and comforted her. "How could something happen to me?" "No, no." Fong Beibei sobbed, shook her head vigorously, and said, "I won't let you go. I want to live a good life with you. I don't want you to take risks for this meaningless person." Fong Beibei tightly hugged Poplar Fruit, afraid that he would really leave. "Let's not care about him. Okay? He won't dare to come back. Don't ruin everything for him, woo. If he went, he would break his girlfriend's heart. If he didn't go, he would not be willing to let go of that bastard who hurt his most beloved person." The road ahead was turning. One step into a devil, one step into an immortal. How should Poplar Fruit choose? You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.